have, thank you, Aubrey. I forgot about that. Before we begin the meeting, Marcy Gerwing will be going over the virtual meeting decorum.
All right, thank you, Abby. All right, the city has engaged with community members to co-create a vision for productive, meaningful, and inclusive civic conversations. Let me get, here we go. Let's see. There we go. This vision supports physical and emotional safety for community members, staff, and board and commission members, as well as democracy for people of all ages, identities, lived experiences, and political perspectives. More about this vision and the project's community engagement process can be found online in the link shown on the screen. The following are examples of rules of decorum found in the Boulder Revised Code and other guidelines that support this vision. These will be upheld during this meeting. All remarks and testimony shall be limited to matters related to city business. No participant shall make threats or use other forms of intimidation against any person. Obscenity, racial epithets, and other speech and behavior that disrupts or otherwise impedes the ability to conduct the meeting are prohibited. The participants may raise their hand to speak during open comment and public comment periods during the hearings. Individuals must display their whole name before being allowed to speak online. Currently, only audio testimony is permitted online. And then to familiarize everyone with the Zoom platform, the raise hand function is found under the reactions menu, typically at the bottom of the screen. To raise hand, you can choose Alt-Y for a PC or Option Y for a Mac. And if you're calling in by phone, you can press *9. Back to you, Abby.
Thank you, Marcy, for doing that. Marcy was stepping in for our usual moderator, Brenda Rittenauer, who probably needs no introduction to most of the people on this call, as she is stepping back from this role. I do want to acknowledge that tonight we have a quorum for the Landmarks Board. As with in-person Landmarks Board meetings, the recording of this meeting will be available in the record archives and on YouTube within 28 days of the meeting. We'll do a very quick roll call and introduction. I'm Abby Daniels, Chair of the Landmarks Board. Chelsea, if you go next.
Hi, I'm Chelsea Castellano, member of the Landmarks Board.
I'm John Decker, and I'm a member of the Landmarks Board.
And I'm Ronnie Pelucio, also a member of Landmarks Board.
And last but certainly not least, Mark.
Hi, I'm Mark McIntyre. I am the non-voting liaison from Planning Board to the Landmarks Board. And I want to take this second. I had no idea that Brenda was stepping back from this role. And I just want to say that Brenda and I have attended many meetings together, whether it was the Transportation Advisory Board or Planning Board or Landmarks Board or other working groups. And so I really appreciate Brenda's work through the years for the city. She's been an excellent communications representative for the city and has made a lot of people feel better and more welcome in their public participation. So Brenda, whatever you're doing, I wish you the best and thank you for working for the city of Boulder.
Thanks so much, Mark. I'll clarify. I'm not leaving the city or leaving my role in the engagement department of the city. I am just leaving this duty of that role as I have worked behind the scenes with Marcy and Abby and Aubrey and Claire and Christopher through the year to make sure that they are ready to sort of lead this Zoom space on their own. But I am still with the city and thank you so much, Mark, for your appreciation. Okay. I really appreciate it.
Thanks.
Well, and I want to echo Mark's comments because Brenda, your demeanor has always been so welcoming and professional. And as you guys can see, she's still just sort of a click away from helping us out as we do this transition. We know that there are people here tonight to participate who may have strong emotions about the project. We want to hear from you, but we do find it more productive if you're speaking to persuade us rather than berating us, staff, or the applicant. As with regular Landmarks Board meetings, you may only speak at the appropriate time during the public hearing. Requests to speak outside of that time will be denied, and there will be the opportunity for public comment on anything not on the agenda this evening. As board chair, I will do a roll call vote for any motions made. Now, we have 2 sets of minutes to approve from May. Does anybody have any changes or alterations to the May 3rd or May 25th meeting? Seeing or hearing no changes, I move that we approve the minutes of the May 3rd meeting, and all of us attended that meeting, so we'll vote on that. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Chelsea,
Aye.
John,
Aye.
Ronnie,
Aye.
and I vote aye, so the May 3rd minutes are approved. Now for the May 25th special meeting, do we have a second to approve those?
Sure. Second.
Thank you, Chelsea. Chelsea,
Aye.
John,
Aye.
and I vote aye, so Ronnie was not able to join us at that meeting, so those minute meetings are approved. Thank you. So now we will open up public comment for anything not on the agenda tonight. Again, we have 1 public hearing scheduled for tonight. So Aubrey, I don't know if you see anyone who has had a chance to raise their hand yet or indicate on their phone that they'd like to speak.
Yes. Oh, yeah, go ahead. I'll do it. Now would be the time, if you would like to speak, go ahead and find the raise hand function in Zoom under the reactions button, or if you're calling in, it's a *9. I see 2 people with their hands raised, Patrick O'Rourke followed by Fran Sheets.
Thank you. So Patrick, you may begin when you're unmuted, and you will have 3 minutes. And Patrick, you may be muted. I don't know if you've started speaking.
No, now I got you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Abby.
Okay. Now you may begin.
The screen changed when she
Yeah.
did that, so
Okay.
the unmute button moved from the center of the screen to the right.
Okay.
Good evening. As you know, Historic Boulder is a countywide organization. And so recently we've been very active outside Boulder. And something came to our attention in the last week, and I'm not sure if Carol Affleck will be on the call tonight. Carol's a resource for us. Carol's the head of the rural historic Belmont area. And the reason I'm bringing this up tonight is she called to let us know that there's a challenge going on with the Belmont markers, the 4 chambers markers. 3 things happened. Number 1 is I think you're aware that the city had that marker removed in the last couple of weeks. It turns out, according to Carol, and I'm hoping she'll get on, she's met with the assessor's office. It's not within the city boundary. So the city had no authority to remove that boundary. Number 1. Number 2, if it was within the boundary, I still don't understand why it wasn't brought before this landmarks board. It's a historic structure. It's whether you think it's a controversial one, it should be heard and it should be addressed. And finally, what's really disturbing is when they removed it, they broke it. They snapped it off above the line, which, that's just not okay. If you're going to do something like that, it just has to be done appropriately. And it's being stored someplace, but somebody needs to follow up with city council, who I believe voted to have it removed in their February hearing. The reason I was going to get on tonight was, as you know, on May 30th, we put in an application for a civic historic district, and we're looking forward to it. We started it over a year ago at the direction of the city staff, which James Hewitt said go for it. This area should, the band shell expansion should be part of a future historic district. The question I have is, we received a timeline from Marcy, and the timeline is the outside edge. The question I have for this board, is there a track, a timetable that would move forward, that would be possible for the city, the current sitting city council to hear it, since they're the ones that directed staff to move forward with working together? And then finally, we're looking to see some sort of coordination between the Landmarks Board and the Parks Board. I know staff has talked amongst each other. I don't know that the two boards have talked. And to be honest with you, I've monitored the last 3 or 4 Parks and Rec boards, and their level of interest, in my opinion, is not that substantial. And so, and they're not going to vote on it. So the only thing they could do is question the desire to move forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Patrick. Marcy, I believe you said Fran Sheets was next.
Yes, followed by Carol Affleck and then Lynn Siegel.
Thank you. So Fran, when you're unmuted, as you well know, you'll have 3 minutes to speak.
Can you hear me now, Abby?
We can hear you, and please state your full name again for the record. Thank you.
My name is Fran Mandel Sheets, and I live in Boulder, and I'm a former board member. And I'm just here to echo what Patrick was saying, because I'm part of the group of the large group of people who are working on the historic district in the downtown. And this board has been so important in the past in landmarking so many of the buildings that are included in the district, the atrium, the tea house inside and out, the band shell, BIMOCA. So I'm hoping to keep bugging you guys and keeping you up to date on what we as a group, as a citizen group, are doing to see this come to light. As you know, it's almost a year to the day that the Landmarks Board proposal to extend the band shell property was rejected by council. And we were promised that night that we would be collaborative work towards the district. And as far as we can tell as citizens anyhow, it hasn't really happened. And for this reason, the Historic Boulder, the Friends of the Band Shell, and the Friends of the Atrium worked hard to, in a group, I mean, the Friends of the Tea House worked hard to bring this group together to produce the application for the historic district. The application is, as of last week, has been accepted, as you know, and the clock is ticking, and you should hear the initiation in your next meeting on the 12th of July. And hopefully you'll designate the district, and council will follow with your recommendation. And don't forget that this process, until you initiate, is a legislative process. So you can talk and you can ask and you can hear from us regularly. So if you have any questions, you're welcome to call anybody who's in the preservation community. You can call me, you can call Catherine Barth, you can call Carl Anuta. There's so many, and Patrick is right up there too. And so is Len Siegel. So there's just a ton of information in history about this area. It really is the heart of Boulder. Most people living here haven't been here really long enough or enough time to really know or understand the significance of this area. So the park has a lot of correspondence. I'm amazed at the literature and the letters from Olmsted and Saco de Boer to the specific plantings, the trees that are still there from their letters and from their planting. And so the civic area, we're just going to keep at you. So I hope that you enjoy it, because it should be a really fun process. And thanks a lot, guys. See you soon.
Thank you, Fran. And now Carol Affleck. And Carol, I don't know if you appear to still be muted.
Carol, you should see a microphone icon on your screen now that you can press.
Looks like you may still be muted.
Let's see, I'll chat to Carol and see if we can't figure out what the issue might be. Maybe Marcy ask if others are interested in sharing while I try and work this out with Carol.
So
Hello?
Marcy,
There we go.
Carol? Okay, we
Yes.
can hear you, and just state your full name for the record and your 3 minutes will commence.
Thank you. Good evening, Landmarks Board members. My name is Carol Affleck. I want to speak with you for just a minute about the Fort Chambers marker. Those of us from Valmont are very concerned that the marker was removed on May 11th without public input. I did send an email to Katie Knapp on May 3rd asking to be a stakeholder. I did not receive an email back right away, although I have met with her since. The marker appears to be on property that is not included in the new fence the city has put up around the Chambers property. That's a concern. If the marker was on private property, how was the city able to remove it? I was told the marker was removed with a backhoe. I don't think that's a proper preservation method of removing a historic marker. And certainly without the stakeholders involved. One of the stakeholders is Shirley Schaller, whose family are the Chambers. The Chambers family paid for the marker, and they were not notified that it was being removed. And I would like to request a cultural resource management plan in place before any historic marker of that nature is removed. And as well that we convene a CEAP process, which I was a part of with the city and the tribes on Valmont Butte. It worked very well. We all had input, and I would like to see the city convene that process as soon as possible. I also would like to see a process where we can talk about the marker and putting it back where it was and where we go from here. Thank you.
Thank you, Carol. And then I believe Lynn Siegel is next.
Sorry, Abby, just a moment. I'm coming.
Thank you, Aubrey.
I'd like to talk about the future of demolitions. For the future of landmarking stuff in Boulder. For example, my house, the siding is melting away. The gutter just fell off. It was aimed towards the house, so it was just bleeding all this rain tonight, slamming it into my siding, which is the addition part of the house. The first part of the house is 1949, the addition's 93, and it's just pouring onto the masonite siding on the 1993 addition. There's, cracks in foundation, lots of things, but there need to be some kind of encouragements for people like me, the public, when I've got my own son who's an architect saying, Mom, you should just scrape it, and my brother and I argue over which house is more of a scrape, his in South Boulder, which I think is much more of a scrape than mine. Mine's made of frame, like wood siding, etc. So I don't know how, I know that if I landmarked it, I could get some benefits. But I want to know just practically to get these demolitions from stopping in Boulder, from places that you have no jurisdiction over, because these are demolitions of the future. You're never going to see them because they were demolished first. I also wanted to put up my support for the downtown civic area center district to go all the way up to Ebenfein Park, and the value of that whole area to be not delayed, not conjoined with Parks and Recreation, to be really preserved and set in stone, so that we have our central part of Boulder that's so essential to our benefit. We want to keep what we've got here, and as it's going, we're losing so much. I'm always supporting having a hardware store locally, and like walkable spaces, and we lost our drugstore at Ideal Market. So all of this development is causing less and less funds to go towards historic endeavors. And so it is your business, even though you're not in the planning department. So I don't know, just some thoughts. Thanks. Bye.
Thank you, Lynn. And Marcy, I don't know if you see anyone else who has raised a hand, or.
I don't see anyone else who has raised their hand to speak under public comment. So if anyone, we have last call for anyone who wants to speak to something that is not a public hearing later on the agenda, now would be the time to raise your hand. And I would say, Abby, I don't see anyone else, but I do see Chelsea.
I do see Chelsea's hand up as well. So we'll close public comment, but Chelsea, would you like to go ahead and unmute?
Yes, thank you. I wanted to respond to the request related to the Fort Chambers stone marker. And I just wanted to reiterate that or share, sorry, I'm having trouble talking tonight. But I just wanted to share that I would not be supportive in any way of putting this marker back. It was removed with the support of the Arapaho and Cheyenne National Tribal representatives because it inaccurately stated that Fort Chambers was used in an Indian uprising, quote unquote, in 1864, when we know that that was false and that the Arapaho and Cheyenne leaders sought peace, and it was used as a reason to kill people and incite violence. And so I think that regardless of our process for landmarking and whatever that is, like I don't think that as a body we should be advocating in any way for the replacement of this truly racist marker that should never have been there in the first place.
Thank you, Chelsea. And you obviously know more about this than I do, because I think my first questions about this was more the process and, whose property does it really lie on. And Marcy, I don't know if you know anything about this, and I don't know if we can take just a few minutes to respond to both Patrick and Carol's remarks about that. But for me, my concern may have been more a process issue, but I don't know much about it.
Sure, I'll share what I know, but I would say that this issue would be best raised with the Open Space and Mountain Parks Department, because it is city-owned land in the county, and so and managed by the Open Space and Mountain Parks Department. And so because it's in the county, even though it's owned by the city of Boulder Landmarks Board doesn't have jurisdiction. And then also it's not a landmarked site. And so this board and this program does not have review over changes to that property. And the removal of the monument was led by Open Space and Mountain Parks, and along with a tribal consultation. So I would encourage anyone who's interested to reach out to that department, because the City of Boulder Landmarks Board doesn't have a role in this.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that. And as far as Frannon and Patrick's comments on the Civic Center Historic District application, I always want to say it's a nomination, but I know it's an application at this point. We look forward to hearing that at our July 12th meeting, the initiation of that. So thank you to the citizens who worked on that. And with that, we've closed public participation. So we're ready to move on to a discussion of landmark pending demolition stays.
Yes. And I will lead that and share my screen again. So here we go. There we go. All right. So the first one in our stays of demolition is the property at 1741 Walnut. It was in March earlier this year that the Landmarks Board had a hearing for the review of the full demolition and chose to place a stay of demolition on the application in order to provide time to look at alternatives. John and Abby were the board representatives, and we met virtually in April 4th, and then an on-site meeting April 18th. And then at your last regular meeting on May 3rd, you all voted to schedule a meeting prior to the stays exploration. And the main conversation, or what came out of the conversations during the stay, is an openness on behalf of the applicant to preserve a portion of the building and incorporate the alley side facade into the redevelopment. However, the stay of demolition was coming to a quick close, and so they requested that it be extended. We've done that through a tolling agreement, and so that will provide them time to continue considering alternatives to demolition, and then including preparing those partial demolition plans. And so we have scheduled it for the July 12th Landmarks Board hearing. The stay of demolition now expires July 19th. Next, oh, go ahead, Mark.
Just really quick, what is a tolling agreement in this context?
Yes, so it's an agreement between the owner and the city to pause the requirements in the code. And so because it's mutually agreed upon and to a date certain, we're able to provide more time than would be allowed by the regular code process.
Great, thank you.
All right, moving on to 1444 Folsom. The Landmarks Board also placed a stay of demolition on this building at the March 1st hearing. And we had an on-site meeting April 11th and then a virtual meeting on May 3rd. And talked about or kind of better understood the structural issues and constraints of this property, due in part to its method of construction and also its location within the floodplain. What came out of those conversations was kind of a general direction that it's important to document this building, incorporate the materials or some of the materials on site if possible. And so that was what we talked about on May 3rd. And then earlier today. So if you didn't have a chance to look at it, understandable, but now would be the time to talk through it. The applicant sent a letter kind of outlining those steps that they are offering to take in terms of documenting the building and potentially incorporating materials into the site. And I just want to be very clear that the only thing we can require by code is the archival documentation. Everything else is kind of a handshake agreement. But I do really appreciate the applicant's collaborative approach to this and willingness to take those steps. And also want to let the board know that the applicant is attending this evening and is here and available for questions or to address the letter that was sent earlier today. So that would be a question. Would you, oh, go ahead, John.
Yeah, I just want to briefly address this. This was an extremely good faith process. I felt like going through it with this group. We toured the property. We looked at the kind of offerings of the property, the things that were interesting and worthy of being saved versus the significant kind of negative factors that were going to make alternatives to demolishing it pretty much unavailable. When I read the letter today, I was very happy at what was stated and how detailed they responded in good faith to the things that were discussed in our on-site and virtual processes. And so I wish them the best on this. And actually, to go a step further with this, is it ever done, or would it be possible to entertain lifting the stay at this point, since this is our last meeting before it expires?
So the board can't take action on the application unless it's publicly noticed that you'll be doing so. So it will just expire
on June 29th.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's what I support then at this.
And just this side note, because this does come up, it's not always a favor to the applicant to lift it early, because the approval is so short at 180 days that not all applicants are ready to move on it quickly. So I appreciate the thought.
I was impressed with the letter.
Good.
Yeah.
All right.
I see Ronnie's hand up.
Oh, sorry, I didn't see that. Go ahead, Ronnie.
It's okay. I didn't actually, I was raising my real hand.
Oh.
Anyway, yeah, I just want to echo my colleagues' points and thank the applicant for being collaborative the whole time, for being transparent about your intentions. And I would say now I think you're going above and beyond with your continued thoroughness in describing what your intentions are. And I just really appreciate it. I think that what was described in the letter will be a wonderful way of documenting and honoring the project. And I wish you guys the best of luck.
Yeah, it extends the usefulness of the resource that the building may have offered. So, yes.
Wonderful. Okay, moving on to the third and final active stay of demolition. It's the small house at 1918 Pine Street. And this stay of demolition has moved very fast. And that's in part because the clock starts ticking the day the fee is paid, but the application isn't always able to be scheduled for the first Landmarks Board hearing. So while the fee was paid earlier this spring, the Landmarks Board hearing wasn't until April 12th. The Landmarks Board representatives for this one, again, are John and Abby. And we have we have not been successful in finding a time that works for the owner, staff, Abby and John to discuss alternatives to demolition. So we do have a site visit scheduled tomorrow, June 8th. However, tonight is the board's last opportunity to schedule a meeting for the July 12th meeting, which is the last regular meeting before the stay expires. And so otherwise, if the board doesn't take action tonight, we would either need to hold a special meeting before July 31st, or the stay would expire and the demolition would be approved. So I do have some, I have the motion language drafted, and I can show that on the board if the board chooses to schedule a hearing for July. I'm also happy to answer questions you might have.
So this one is interesting because I think by tomorrow afternoon, some of us would know a lot more about whether to schedule it or not. And I know, Marcy, there's a possibility of on July 12th, based on tomorrow's site visit, scheduling a special meeting. I still think if there's interest in having an initiation hearing, it would probably be preferable to do it at our regularly scheduled July 12th meeting, even though we haven't had the conversation with the owners yet. I don't know what my colleagues on the board think. I still believe, and I think it's the reason the stay was placed on this property, is that there's probable cause to believe this is eligible for landmark designation. And I would lean towards going ahead and scheduling it, even if through the process and through the meeting tomorrow, maybe any follow-up virtual meetings or so forth with the owner, even if I know we've had an application where we've scheduled the initiation and a different decision is made that evening of that hearing based on more information.
Yeah, I think what you're saying makes sense, Abby, but I'd be curious to hear what Marcy's thoughts are on that.
Yeah.
You know, are we, by doing that, immediately creating work for staff that may not be used, or what is your thought, Marcy?
Oh, I appreciate that. And I will say that we've had so many stays of demolition this year, and I think that the other three are models of how the process is supposed to work. And with this one, it's just unfortunate that we have not been able to utilize that time like we have with the other ones. I think that my recommendation would be that the board do schedule a hearing for July 12th, because then you have options. The options at that hearing could be landmark initiation of the landmark designation process. You could craft the motion so that you could also approve the demolition if that's the way the board wants to go, or you could take no action. If you don't schedule a hearing tonight, then effectively you're approving this demolition unless there's a special meeting held. And so I would err on the side of scheduling the hearing in order to provide options for you all. It does add work, but it also, that is my recommendation.
I think that's smart, and I'd like to make that motion if we have language.
Sure.
Well, looky there.
I move to schedule a hearing to consider initiation of landmark designation or approval of a demolition request prior to the expiration of the stay of demolition for the buildings at, if you could click back to the previous screen, 1918 Pine Street.
I second that motion. Is there any discussion before we do a roll call vote? Not seeing or hearing anything, let's go ahead and vote on the motion. Chelsea?
Aye.
John,
Aye.
Ronnie,
Aye.
and I vote aye. So the motion passes unanimously to schedule an initiation hearing for 1918 Pine Street at our July 12th board meeting.
And for anyone that's interested, the site visit tomorrow will be at 1 o'clock. It's open to the public for observation. And then, yes, it's at 1 o'clock tomorrow. And that was the end of the stays of demolition.
So now we're ready to move on to our one public hearing this evening. This is a public hearing in consideration of a landmark alteration certificate application to demolish an existing garage to replace with a 986 square foot detached accessory structure at 661 Maxwell Avenue, a contributing property in the Mapleton Hill Historic District pursuant to section 91118 of the Boulder Revised Code 1981 and under the procedures prescribed by chapter 1 through 3 quasi-judicial hearings, Boulder Revised Code 1981. And Claire will be making the staff presentation this evening.
Thank you, Abby. So I will go through the quasi-judicial hearing procedures. All speaking to the item will be sworn in and board members will note any ex parte contacts. I'll then give the staff presentation. After that, the board may ask questions. The applicant will have 10 minutes to present to the board and the board may ask questions. We'll then open the public hearing. After all members of the public have made comments, the applicant may respond to anything that was said. We'll then ask everyone to mute their computers and the board will deliberate. A motion requires an affirmative vote of at least 3 members to pass. Motions must state findings, conclusions, and recommendation. And a record of this hearing is available in a couple of days as a video recording, and the official record will be added to the records archive within 28 days, usually sooner. Before I pass it back to Abby for ex parte contacts, the board has requested that we note who has reviewed this previously, and this has not been previously reviewed as the LDRC does not review demolition of buildings in historic district or new construction. So back to you, Abby.
Thank you, Claire. And I also want to thank the owners who have agreed to this virtual quasi-judicial hearing. I have no ex parte contacts, but I did drive by the property so I could see it. Chelsea?
None, thanks.
John?
I have none.
Ronnie?
I have none.
And Mark, I see your hand up. Is that from a previous, you have a question, please? No.
No, no,
You do.
I actually consulted with Hella Panawig, the planning board's staff attorney, in regard to ex parte communications and how they might pertain to a non-voting member. To a little bit of my surprise, well, no, Hella's always very conservative and very thorough. So she advised me to divulge anything that might be considered an ex parte communication, even though I'm a non-voting member. So actually, I have a little list of things that I am going to divulge. And anyway, so I'm going to do that. A couple days ago, I contacted Laura Kaplan, the prior planning board liaison, to just make her aware of this application, because this application is of particular interest in terms of the intersection of the city's housing goals and new ADU regulations, and how those might relate to a historic district. So I discussed that with Laura a couple of days ago. Today, we all received the brief email from Tim Plass, who is an acquaintance of mine, former city council member, etc. And I replied to Tim, thanking him for the email and thanking him for focusing his comments on the code and the application of the code. And so that was another possible ex parte communication. And finally, this afternoon, I talked to Lisa Howe from the city's planning department, who led the modifications to our ADU regulations, which were recently passed by council. And I asked her a couple clarifying questions about the new ADU regulations, when they would go into effect, and how, as an example, this application in a historic district might be affected by or changed by the new regulations versus the regulations that are current as of today. So those are my ex parte communications in regard to this matter.
Thank you, Mark. And as just another bit of information, Tim Plass also served on this board for years and was chair of the Landmarks Board 10-15 years ago. So thank you for ex parte contacts. Claire, I'll turn it back over to you.
Great, thank you, Abby. So the criteria for review today are outlined in the Boulder Revised Code under 9.11.18 and C. The review is to ensure that the proposed work preserves, enhances, or restores and does not damage exterior architectural features of the property, does not adversely affect the historic architectural value of the property. Architecture, arrangement, texture, color, arrangement of color, and materials are compatible with the character of the property, and that the Landmarks Board considers the economic feasibility of alternatives, incorporation of energy efficient design, and the enhanced access for the disabled. The options today are for the Landmarks Board to approve the application. This is subject to a 16-day City Council call-up period. If the City Council would like to review the application, they will inform us at the June 15th meeting. The board may also deny the application, which would be subject to a 30-day period in which City Council could request to review the decision. A denial would mean the applicant could not submit the same application within 12 months, but the board may also allow the applicant to withdraw if it's heading in that direction. So this application was received on April 5th. Requests to demolish an existing structure in a historic district and construct a new building larger than 340 square feet are automatically referred to the full board for review, rather than going to the LDRC first. This property is located near the corner of 7th and Maxwell. The front of the house faces south onto Maxwell Avenue. The accessory building is at the rear facing Concord Alley, which is right here. The house at 661 Maxwell Avenue was constructed in 1910 within the identified 1865 to 1946 period of significance for the Mapleton Hill Historic District. Although it's been modified, the house retains architectural integrity, and we consider it to be contributing to the historic character of the district. The garage at the rear was originally 1.5 story. This building you see in the image here was constructed by 1910, the same year as the house, and it appears on Sanborn fire insurance maps in 1910, 1922, and 1931. It was partially photographed in 1929. That's this image here. And you can see a sliver of it at the edge of the photograph. And sometime between 1939 and 1949, which is this image. We believe this is 1939 as it's right here. The address is written on the negative of the image, which usually indicates it's the earlier image, but we are not entirely sure, so we're calling it 1939 to 1949. So acknowledging that perspective in photographs is sometimes skewed, we compared the images using the gable end of the house at 652 Concord Avenue, which is right across the alley, and you can see that in yellow right here, and the original rear of the house, which is this orange line here, with the peak of the accessory gable. So we've got the rear of the house behind in the alley showing up on both images, the original rear of the house in orange, and the gable of the garage in green. And you can see that it was up here in 1949 and is currently, I don't know if you can see that, all the way down here currently. And although this is not hugely scientific, this did show us that the height of the current accessory building is much lower than the original building. In addition, a permit was created in 1978 for the construction of a new garage on the same foundation as this original building. So we suspect that the building was actually reconstructed using the same footprint, possibly the same foundation. However, the building today retains no historic integrity compared to the historic photographs. The height, the siding, windows and door configurations, roof pitch, and eave depth have all been modified. So the proposal is for the demolition of this 1978 garage, which has a 330 square foot footprint that is shown in yellow, the yellow outline here, and the construction of a new 986 square foot detached accessory building with a 555 square foot footprint, which is shown in gray. The proposed building would be set back about 3 feet from the alley. This is the alley right here, which is about 18 inches further back than the existing garage. The parking area to the east currently is this whole area, and will be retained but smaller. It will be this area here. The proposed fence line on the east is about 4 feet further back onto the property from the alley than the existing fence, making the parking area actually deeper right here. In addition, there's a patio proposed on the interior of the lot. The distance from the house to the proposed new building is about 29 feet, which is a loss of about 12 feet. This is about 12 feet here. There's also a ground level exterior stairwell into the basement and a proposed fence, which is kind of hard to see, at the northwest corner of the proposed building right here. The design of the proposed new building, including its general form, roof pitch, and height, is reflective of the historic building shown in the historic photographs. It would have a steeply pitched gable roof with the addition of some shed dormers. This is the alley facade. There are 2 vertically proportioned double hung 2/2 divided light windows facing the alley right here. The dormer windows are smaller, double hung divided light windows. The proposed building would be clad in painted 4-inch reveal lap siding, and it would have a metal roof. The proposed dormers also include a shingle detail. This is the east elevation. The lower level includes a trio of those windows, same style window. This elevation includes a 12-foot tall projection with a single full light entry door and a roof deck. So this is the south elevation that faces the house and is the interior of the lot with minimal visibility. This includes two double sliding doors, a single 2/2 divided light double hung window at the lower level. That's right here. The upper level includes two dormers, one with a pair of windows, the other with two windows flanking a single light door. And the door opens onto the proposed roof deck, which is right here. So moving around, the proposed west elevation is similar to the east elevation with a single window in the gable end. You can see the exterior stair to the basement includes a railing proposed to match the railing at the main house. Staff based our analysis on 9/11/18B and C of the Boulder Revised Code, the general design guidelines for historic districts and individual landmarks, and the Mapleton Hill Historic District guidelines. The proposed demolition is for a building that we find was either constructed or heavily modified after 1978 outside the period of significance. Staff considers that the removal of this existing 1978 garage and replacing this building with the proposed new accessory building would not be detrimental to the overall historic character of the historic district. As the changes are generally consistent with the general design guidelines and the Mapleton Hill Historic District design guidelines, we also considered that the proposed new building will not adversely affect the special character or special historic architectural and value of the property, provided the stated conditions are met. And we also considered that the architectural style of the proposed new building reflects the general form, roof pitch, and height of the historic building located on the site and photographed circa 1929 to 1949. The proposed structure is subordinate to and compatible with the designated property and the adjacent properties. The location, mass, scale, and materiality of the proposed new accessory building will not detract from the overall historic character of the site or the principal building. So we went through the entire design guidelines in the packet. So I'm just going to summarize here and will be available for questions afterwards if you have any. So in general, the design guidelines call for new buildings to be subordinate, lesser in mass and scale, to respect neighboring buildings and the streetscape, and simpler than the historic building. New construction should incorporate elements of the character of the district, but should not imitate or give a false sense of history. The new accessory buildings should be consistent with the existing pattern of small structures that are simple and utilitarian in design, following the character and pattern of historic accessory structures. Alley buildings should maintain a scale that is pleasant to walk along and comfortable for pedestrians. So staff found that the proposed accessory building generally matches the location and orientation of the historic building shown on historic images. It's smaller in mass and scale than the primary house. Detailing is generally simpler than the main house. The design of the accessory building does not reference the primary structure or existing non-historic garage, but does reference similar structures found in the historic district. And the proposed building maintains a human scale on the alley facade. The design guidelines define the alignment, orientation, and spacing of buildings that create the context of the neighborhood. The new building is proposed to be set back further from the alley than the existing building by about 18 inches. While the footprint of the proposed accessory building is larger than the existing garage, the proposed accessory building is generally in the same location and orientation as the historic accessory building. Backyard space is reduced from 41 feet to 29 feet. However, the built area to open space seems consistent with adjacent properties. And spacing between buildings at the alley is reduced, but not eliminated. There's at least 15 feet space between the proposed accessory building and the existing accessory buildings to the west and the east. Alleys are considered a very important element of the district. The guidelines ask for consideration to the variety of shape, size, and alignment, and the human scale. The general mass and scale of the proposed building is not out of character with the alley on this block, which includes a variety of 1 and 1.5 story buildings with varied setbacks. The proposed windows facing the alley also add to the human scale. The variety of roof forms in the district are an important visual element. Dormers are intended to be elements of secondary importance to the main roof form and should be lower than the main roof ridge, compatible with the size and scale of the existing building, and include windows that are similar in proportion to first floor windows but smaller. And the guidelines state that often 2 small dormers are more appropriate than 1 large dormer. The dormers on the proposed building are a modern interpretation that was not found on the historic building, but they are traditionally scaled and pitched and are lower than the main roof ridge. Decks are also a modern expression, and they do not have a visual counterpart in historic buildings. The roof deck proposed is contained within the roof mass of the south projection. The guidelines say that that second-story roof decks or balconies are not appropriate for freestanding accessory buildings and garages. However, staff considered that this may be appropriate because it has minimal visibility being on the interior of the lot. However, the proposed location flush with the western wall of the gable here, western wall of the gable end, which is right here, increases the visual mass and kind of disrupts the traditional proportion of the building. And we suggested that the roof deck would be appropriate if the projection was inset from the southwest corner of the building to break up the mass and retain the proportion of the 1.5 story building on the gable ends. The door and window sizes and patterns should harmonize with the historic context rather than compete or copy it. The guidelines note that windows in new structures should reflect the window patterns and proportions of the district and utilize similar materials. For elevations visible from public streets, the relationship of solid to voids should also be compatible. Windows should be trimmed with materials similar in scale, proportion, finish, and character to those used traditionally. Openings should indicate floor levels and generally should not occur between floors. And dormer windows should be similar in proportion to first and second floor windows, but smaller. The alley facade, which is this one here, includes 2 vertically proportioned double hung windows at the lower level. The dormer windows above are smaller and also double hung. The windows are traditionally proportioned and add to the human scale. At the south elevation, which is this one, which is not visible from the public rights of way, the windows and doors vary in size and proportion. Although this non-symmetry is not inconsistent with the guidelines, staff suggests maintaining consistency of the vertical proportions and using smaller vertical windows at the upper level. And we also suggested eliminating the divided lights and simplifying the trim to distinguish this as a simple accessory structure. So to summarize, we considered the proposed demolition of the 1978 building and construction of a new accessory building generally consistent with the general design guidelines and the Mapleton Hill Historic District guidelines. The existing garage was either constructed or heavily modified after 1978 outside the period of significance. The general form, roof pitch, and height of the proposed accessory building is reflective of the historic building shown in the 1929 to 1949 images. The design of the accessory building references similar structures found in the historic district. The proposed new accessory building is generally subordinate in massing to the primary structure. The detailing is generally simpler than the main house. And while the footprint of the proposed accessory building is larger than the existing garage, the proposed is generally in the same location and orientation as the historic accessory building. The backyard space is retained, and built area to open space seems consistent with adjacent properties. We did consider that the following changes are needed to ensure it is consistent with the guidelines. Simplify the building to differentiate it as an accessory building. This would include eliminating the divided lights in the windows and traditionally scaling the size of the windows, using smaller windows at upper levels. And inset the south projection from the southwest corner of the building to break up the massing and retain the proportion of the 1.5-story building on the gable ends. So the recommended motion is for the Landmarks Board to conditionally approve the application. The conditions proposed by staff are for the applicant to make revisions for review by the Landmarks Design Review Committee, including modifying the flat roof entry portion of the building to make it inset, eliminating the divided lights, vertically orienting the windows that are smaller in size on the second level to follow traditional patterns, and then providing details such as the fence elevations, the materiality and permeability of the patio and parking area, and all exterior materials, including all wood doors and windows, lighting, siding, shingle type, gutters, etc. The exterior stair railing, the final paint colors, and location of trash service area, mechanical devices on the exterior. To summarize our findings, the proposal will be generally consistent with the purposes of this chapter. It will not damage the historic character of the landmark property or the exterior architectural features of the property. The architectural style, arrangement, texture, color, and arrangement of color and materials used on the addition will be compatible with the character of the existing building and its site and the historic district. And the proposed work will not adversely affect the special character or special historic architectural and value of the landmark property, as it is generally consistent with the general design guidelines and will generally comply with sections 2.0 and 3.3 of the general design guidelines and section 91118B3 of the Boulder Revised Code. So that's the end of the staff presentation. This is a reminder of the next steps in the process. The applicant and owner have up to 10 minutes to present to the board, and the board may ask questions. We'll then hear comments from any member of the public who wishes to speak. The applicant may have additional time to address anything said during public comment, and then board will ask everyone to mute their computers and will deliberate. I'd like to remind the board that the landmark alteration certificate review is limited to design review of the building, and the permitting and use of the building as an ADU is a separate process with its own requirements. So the question today for the board is whether the request to demolish an accessory building and construct a new accessory building meets the standards for a landmark alteration certificate. Specifically, is the demolition of the existing garage appropriate? Is the mass, scale, and location of the proposed accessory building appropriate? Do the dormers, roof decks, window, and door openings meet the design guidelines? And are the proposed materials appropriate? If yes, staff will approve the application with or without conditions, and if no, the board will deny the request. So any questions from the board before we continue with the applicant's presentation?
Well, I want to jump in quickly and say, Claire, excellent presentation. You really brought the staff memorandum to life. I have one really quick question, and I apologize if you covered this. Does the proposed 986 square feet include the lower level or the basement?
Marcy, would you please answer that question?
Yeah, happy to. Abby, no, it does not.
Okay. I didn't think so. Usually that's not counted, correct?
Correct.
Thank you.
I had a follow-up question, and then I'm glad you asked that, Abby. How, and I know we could do the math if I looked at the plans, but how many square feet are on the second or upper floor?
I may defer to the applicant to
Okay.
ask the question for the applicant after their presentation.
Thank you, will do.
I have one question. Is any portion of the basement occupied?
Again, probably a question best answered by the applicant. My understanding that it's intended for use of storage, but I would defer to the applicant.
Okay,
And again, the Landmarks Board purview is over what is the exterior impact of having a basement, which is limited to the stairs and any egress windows, and it is not the purview of this program to speak to the use of a building.
all right, but I was just seeing the windows, and if it is occupied, the area should be included in the total, or at least considered in the total.
Okay, if nobody has any additional questions, I will ask Aubrey if she would be so kind as to promote Renee, who I see as an attendee, and we will.
Renee, you should have received a pop-up to be promoted. I'll send it again.
Renee, would you like me to share this image?
Hi, can you guys see me and hear me?
Hi.
Yep. Okay.
Yes.
Hi, so I first want to say, thank you to Claire for an awesome presentation as well. She did a really good job of bringing forth a lot of critical details for the Landmarks Board for this and presenting it. And thanks for the Landmarks Board for being here to listen to the presentation. So I am going to, I guess I'll address the two questions real quick, if that's okay. And then I'll address, we did get some emails that were sent around. And so I want to address some of the concerns of the neighbor property.
Renee, if I could interject one moment. My name is Lucas Sparkling with the City Attorney's Office. I just want to make sure Abby has a chance to swear you.
Yeah,
Forward.
so
Thank you.
Lucas, you beat me to that. So since this is a quasi judicial hearing, Renee, if you will raise your hand and swear to tell the board the full. Thank you.
Sorry, Abby.
No, you were on a roll, so please.
So I raised my hand, and I am Renee Golobic, and I am a resident of Boulder, Colorado.
And you swear to tell us the whole truth.
Oh, I swear to tell you the whole truth and
Okay,
nothing but the truth.
thank you. You may now proceed.
Okay, sorry. So you are correct about, I'll talk about the size first of the building. So the footprint of the building will be 554 square feet. The existing area of the current building, the current structure is 331 square feet. That 987 square feet, the total area of the unit, does include some parts of that lower level, only because according to the FAR and floor area ratio, you have to include anything that's more than 3 feet below grade. So some of the window and the door is included. There's a calculation that is called for in the floor area to allow that 987 square feet for the proposed ADU. So some of that square feet does include the basement, which I will now talk to about the intended use of the storage in the basement. We all know these older homes do not have a lot of storage. And my client and the owner of the house, owner of Maxwell, he runs a camp for kids and teaches kids how to bike. And so a lot of that has to do with bikes and bringing in the bike. So the storage unit is basically to accommodate the extra for his camps and learning how to teach the kids how to bike. So a lot of that storage is going to be, so it's not considered part of the ADU. It will not be the ADU. It will be only used for the main house. So hopefully those two questions are answered. Again, you can ask additional questions. I want to talk about the use of the house. In those emails, it was brought to the attention that this, the homeowner will fix and flip or will get a lot of money. And, you know, they renovated the house. This is their dream home. And they renovated the house during COVID. And his Gurian and Sarah lived in the house. And when she moved in less than a year of moving in, she was diagnosed with terminal brain cancer. And so within the year, she passed away in the house. So there's a lot of good memories and a lot of bad memories, but it was their dream home and they loved living in the neighborhood. Their child had their wedding in the backyard. And so there are a lot of good memories. And so the idea of this ADU is actually for extra family members to live there. That he has 3 children. And so it's just to create and allow actually for him to make some good memories in the ADU. While the older children in their 20s who have, you know, careers within Boulder will be living in the main house. So it is not a rental property now. It is owner occupied. It will continue to be owner occupied and moving forward. And we don't need to talk about use, but I just want to address some concerns. Some other concerns was the tunnel effect down the alleyway. And I want to, you know, speak to, there's some pictures in the packet that talk about, and I don't know if Claire can pull that up, but it's the site plan with all the different garages. And a lot of the garages have overhead doors. And, you know, our unit, and they have the gable end facing the alleyway. This is designed to have the soffit end face the alleyway to create a 1.5 story effect. So it does not contain, you know, does not create that tunnel effect. And then there's some windows that allow for, you know, different materiality and, you know, articulation down the alleyway. It again will be set back further than what the existing building is. The existing building is 1.5 feet. This building will be set back according to the setback, which is 3 feet. Now there was a lot of talk about the privacy. There's a deck. The deck is, as you can see from the main house, the deck is at 17 feet, 10.5 inches. So the deck on the main house has, you know, the neighbors, you know, they get to see the rooftop deck. This will actually create a lot of privacy for the neighbors and, you know, and a lot of privacy for my client on their roof deck. So I just want to address that. And the parking was an issue. Currently, the parking right now is actually a parallel parking space because the way you enter the garage is from the east. And so, but this will actually be a perpendicular parking space. So there'll be a lot more room to, you know, accommodate a larger size car than what currently is there. And also addressing some privacy concerns about looking on top of, you know, these windows and stuff, looking on the neighbors. The windows are, you know, for the stairwell and bathroom. So they're not going to be living spaces. And so somebody's not going to be sitting there staring out the window at the neighbors. So I think that was all. This section was just to show the deck railing and where it comes into the house. And then also the height of the alleyway. There's a house that's to the north and to the east of this, just one block over, and that's at 2535 7th Street, and that is 18 feet, 8 inches high. So, you know, we would be higher than that, but we're not, it's not, you know, a whole story higher than the garages in the area. So, and, you know, Claire brought up really good points about, you know, the modifications, and we're totally, I like all the things she was saying, and we can modify them as needed, and we'll take those recommendations into consideration, and hopefully we can meet with the LDRC on Wednesdays. So think that's it. More questions?
Thank you, Renee. Ronnie, you have a question?
Yep, I just have some questions for Renee, some clarifying questions.
Okay.
There's a handful of detail questions that I want to ask. I feel like probably some bigger picture things to talk about, but the overall massing of the building is one of the first things that I'm hoping that you could shed some light on. I think there might be different information or conflicting information in your set, and I wish I had the drawing tool. I'm looking for it, but I think I don't have access to it, so I can't do it. I was going to draw here for us. But this section demonstrates that the stairs are up against the exterior wall. The floor plans demonstrate that the stairs are up against the exterior wall. The dormer that is drawn is aligned with that exterior wall, which works in section. It's like all of this stuff is working. So you can climb up a set of stairs and get to the top. When you look at the building elevation, if we look at the side elevation, and I don't know who's in control of this now, but I appreciate you flipping around. There we go. Nope, side elevation. There we go. Let's look at the one on the right. Okay, so the alley side shows that the dormer is stepped back. In fact, it's stepped back on both sides. So I just am looking for clarification because I think that those are not telling the same story.
And Ronnie, I think you're right in developing this. What I think would solve the problem is if we could line up the wall where the stairs are and then maybe step back where the bathroom is in plan. We don't have a plan, but, and then if the soffit could come out farther, it would actually be a bigger roof on that side. So it would still look the same from the alleyway because we would have a soffit that's not, 6 inches, it would be a 1.5 feet. And so we could create that look. I mean, certainly we can change it so it does step back in the massing.
And so I think I think I understand, but I just want to say, are you suggesting that you're going to move the stairs inboard of the plan on the lower level in order to get the stairs to align with an inset dormer?
Yes.
Okay, so it'll look like this. It won't look like the plan.
Section. Yeah.
The section, sorry, or the plan actually, but okay. And then if you go back to that section, and sorry, I'm really digging into this, but that's so important, right? It's like, how is the overall massing of this building? How is it truly? It looks to me like the roof form, the primary roof form, and the dormer roof forms are asymmetrical. So if you were to align up the fascias, or if you were to line up the spring points for either the dormers or the primary roof, they don't spring from the same points, and it implies that the gable is not in the center of the building, or that there are multiple knee wall heights / plate heights.
So Claire, do you have the section that was given in the document? Not this new one.
Tell me what page it would have been on in the
Yeah, because I think that will.
in the applicant, yeah, in your materials, was it in there?
Yeah. So on my pages or on your, like page 13 of the application.
Ronnie, I think it's a phenomena of the offset of the dormer walls to one side of the center line of the house.
Oh, it's page 28, LAC05.
In the section.
Yeah, it's unclear to me, I just, I guess.
It does look
Renee, it sounds like
eccentric.
Renee, it's definitely, it's not symmetrical right now, but I think Renee has something else that she's gonna explain or tell us what her thought is. Maybe it's asymmetrical.
No, it's not asymmetrical. So I was today when I was talking to people's concerns, I was messing around with this and I wanted to show the railing and the deck. And when I was I was playing with some other forms. So when I printed it, printed with the different forms. If you go to the section on the page 28 of our handbook, and it would be mine. It's item 5A, Claire.
I think I have it. Hang on, bear with me a sec. Oops.
So that.
This one?
Yeah, there you go, Ronnie.
Okay.
So
Okay, good.
that still happens, but it is symmetric. It's symmetric. So the
Okay,
one
so
thing.
this, I see. So this one's symmetrical. Okay, good. And I had another question, Renee, and it was about this one that wasn't shown in the last one. Is that the tail on the primary roof?
I was just gonna
on
say.
the left is nubby, and the tail on the primary roof on the right is long.
No.
Are there different tail lengths?
No.
Okay. So there's one in the 3D model. Do you think the massing is the thing that is accurate to the overall like volume?
I think the massing on the 3D model makes sense. Yes. And I think, yeah.
Okay, good. And I have one more thing. Just it'll really help me on all these things. So the if you could go to elevation, Claire. Yeah, these elevations. The elevation drawings, and I recognize there's an abstraction when you ever drawing 3D model and stuff. It's really just a clarification question. Show trim work that is, it's got a more historic trim work around all of the windows where there's a cap and then there's a horizontal piece. And in some cases, there's actually a little piece of trim and a sill. And in the 3D model image, if you go to the 3D model image, it looks to me like the 3D model image doesn't show any of that. What's your plan? Is it trimmed or is it?
Oh, definitely trimmed.
Okay. I kind of thought that was the case. That I understand why that might not be shown in the 3D model, but with all of those other things, I thought I might ask. So I thank you, Renee. I think I understand, and no more questions.
Yeah, I think it's just the limit of the 3D, and the fact that it's white and the trim would be white, and it's hard to see, but yes, we want to do it just like the drawing shows, to keep the historic trim work around the windows.
John or Chelsea, do you have any questions for Renee?
I don't.
I don't, my only question was going to be around if the conditions recommended by staff were, if there were any issues with that from the applicant, but it sounds like there aren't. So
no,
I'll just ask. Okay, good. Yeah. So no questions for me.
Thank you, Chelsea. So we will move on to public comment. Since this is quasi-judicial, we will swear in every speaker. And Renee, I think you're familiar that you'll be given an additional 3 minutes after public participation to address anything that was raised during public comment.
Yes.
So if you haven't already, please raise your hand or press *9 on your phone if you would like to speak to this item.
It looks like we have a few people with their hands raised, starting with Jason Hugh, followed by Laura Harbin.
Thank you, Marcy. So we'll go ahead and we'll swear in Jason. Jason, you'll have 3 minutes to speak. And when you start, just swear to tell the board the full truth and then state your name for the record, and you'll have your 3 minutes.
Sure, no problem. Can you guys hear me?
We can.
Hi, my name is Jason Hsu. I'm an attorney with Arnold & Porter. I swear to tell the truth. Did I get everything? Thanks
You
for
did
everyone's time
great.
tonight. Thanks. Good evening, everybody. Thanks for everyone's time tonight. Appreciate the staff presentation. That was super informative. I represent a property owner adjacent to the 661 Maxwell property who's objecting to the construction of the ADU in this historic district. We're just respectfully requesting an adjournment on the matter until the next board meeting so that the neighbors of the property can properly review and address the proposal. My client didn't receive any notification about this proposal. My understanding is that a notice was mailed out, but my client didn't receive it. I don't want to get into process and all that. We're just asking for, my client only heard about the proposal and the meeting from neighbors about 2 days ago while he was on an international business trip. We're just asking for some more time to look through all the materials, the excellent presentation, and properly submit a public comment. That's all we're asking for right now.
Thank you, Jason. And next I see Alan. And Alan, if you as well will swear to tell the board the full truth now that it looks like you're unmuted, and then your 3 minutes will begin. Oh, you may be muted now.
How about now? Am I unmuted?
You are definitely unmuted, so please proceed after you swear to tell us the full truth.
Okay. Hi, my name is Alan Longo, and I live across the alley from the proposed project. Thanks, Claire and Renee. Those were helpful presentations. I do understand homeowners' rights and desire to develop their property, and I'm not against an ADU in general, but I am opposed to this particular project. I can appreciate the architecture of the proposed house in another context and location. I do find the application to be a carefully stretched interpretation of the historic guidelines, and the renderings. I know they're renderings, but they do appear to be some idealistic place, may be more appropriate for a new development out east somewhere, not Mapleton Hill. To be clear, this roughly 1,000 square foot house with a basement, it doesn't appear, again, they're renderings, I know, but doesn't appear vernacular or Victorian in design, especially with an elevated deck. And it does, in my opinion, create unreasonable mass and density in the alley. This 2-story house, I think, will make Concord Alley into a tunnel. I know that was addressed, but I also think it creates a bookending effect on the alley because this house on the east end, and there's another really, in my opinion, too large of a house at the west end of the alley, as you have in your attachment A, figure 1. Please take a look at that. When you drive in from the west side, that house looms over you, and now there's going to be another house that looms over you as you drive in from the east side. This part of the alley already has at least 2 near lot width garages at 651 and 655 Maxwell, as long with fencing that continues that tunnel effect. There's also 2 large garages, my own at 642 Concord, which is admittedly a big garage, as well as 2535 7th Street, which is actually the Concord Alley. That's the 18.5-foot one, and a smaller garage at 652 Concord. A lot of this is predicated on this historic photo that was found in the 1930s showing some barn-like structure at 661. But the current setting and context is now inappropriate for something similar or larger than that because of other structures that now fill that space. So it should also be noted that the proposal is not to put back what was there, but it's to use the space to build another house. If you've seen the movie Up, I think that cute little house at 2515 7th is going to feel quite like that. And I'd like to point out that the owner requested to modify that house several times and it was appropriately denied by Landmarks. That homeowner had rights also. Regarding the implementation, there's really no way to build this and dig a basement and new foundation without obstructing the alley for significant durations and diverting cars onto the private properties of 652 Concord and 2535 7th. Going in from Maxwell is dangerous because there's 2 offset intersections in front of that house. And
Alan, unfortunately, your time has expired. If you can wrap up in just a couple of words.
sure, I request the board to deny this or guide it to be a more appropriate single story, and also request review by city council. Thanks for your time and thanks for considering public input.
Thank you. And I see next Lynn Siegel.
It doesn't look like it's very.
Lynn, I apologize. Will you please swear to tell the board the truth, and then your 3 minutes will
Truth,
start.
the best I know at Lynn Siegel, I don't think the space is actually subordinate to the main house, according to your guidelines. I was mixing this up a bit with that house with the antlers on it on the corner, because that had just been reviewed. But I see that it's in the middle of the street. I know the situation there. And I also wanted to say that I think that it's really inappropriate to demo a perfectly good 1978 building. I have, 1949, 1993, and 1997 on my property, an addition and then an outbuilding. And I say there needs to be a better coordination between Environmental Advisory Board, or I just don't think there should really be demolition of structures without really good reason. I'd want to know the reasons in detail, that this same structure couldn't be built onto. I mean, it's pretty much of a square box, the original thing. And why couldn't that be popped up appropriately and expanded from what it already is? So that was my other thought. But the subordination issue to the main house is really a consideration also. The level of density and intensity in the neighborhood, in this historic neighborhood, it has to be carefully considered. I mean, I like the design of the thing, and I like the structure itself, but in the context of where it is, seems like there might be a bit of bulk to it that isn't appropriate. But then with our ADU changes in the guidelines, maybe it effectively is allowed, considering the land use changes coming out lately. I like to see that there's actually living space for people in it rather than just a garage. Because living space is more important than covering cars, although it does mean that your catalytic converter can get stolen, which is not good, $3,700. Once again, all these expenses cause an issue with historic preservation for
And
average people.
Lynn, thank you, but your time has expired. Thank you. And next I see Laura Harbin. And Laura, just like the previous speakers, we will ask you to state your full name and swear to tell the board the whole truth.
Hello, my name is Laura Harbin, and I swear to tell the whole truth. As I said, my name is Laura Harbin, and I am representing 652 Concord. Speaking on this matter today is not something that I take lightly, and it is not a comfortable situation, because I realize that no one wants to hear opposition for a project that they have set their minds on doing. It was not until I saw a photo of what this ADU would look like in the alley and from my property that I quickly realized how detrimental it will be to my property and the privacy of surrounding properties, while also creating a tunnel-like effect in our shared alley. I was truly shocked when I saw the size and height of this proposed ADU because I never dreamed anything like this would ever be proposed in Mapleton Hill. Mapleton Hill homeowners are aware that they will be bound by the design guidelines, and the Landmarks Committee is expected to uphold these guidelines and make sure they are followed with the intent of assuring that the district is preserved for future generations. It is stated in the introduction of the design guidelines, the guidelines are intended to be used as an aid to appropriate design and not as a checklist of items for compliance. Pages 40 to 62 of this proposal are just that, a checklist with cherry-picked points that cunningly meander between discussing a traditionally used garage, a historic stable, and an ADU. The reality is, this application is for new construction of a spec house that is larger than 7 homes within a block that are on their own lots, not behind a larger primary home. The standards are necessarily broad in scope because they apply to all landmark sites and districts throughout the city, and that is why it is the board's duty to determine what is appropriate within this historic district and not to each individual homeowner's right to do whatever they choose. I am begging the board members to keep in mind that comparing this structure to surrounding structures that are used as garages is not comparing apples to apples because none of those are currently being used as ADUs. The surrounding garages that are already existing do not violate the privacy of neighboring homes. They do not pose any sort of noise problems for the neighboring homes, and I am begging the board to protect this historic district by voting against this proposal. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Laura, for your time. Marcy, I don't see any other raised hands or if anyone has tried to call in on the phone to speak to this. But as Marcy would say, this is sort of last call for public comment for this proposal.
And again, if you're calling on the phone, it's *9. And if you are in Zoom, the reactions function, you then choose the raise hand function there. As Brenda would say, give it a nice 7 seconds or so. And then if there are no additional hands, I think it's safe to move back to the applicant's response.
I still don't see any new raised hands, so I think that we will go ahead and close public comment for this hearing. And now, Renee, you do have 3 minutes to speak to anything that you've heard from the public or anything you would like to add.
Yeah. So I just want to add a few things, and I don't know if Claire could bring up page LAC07 or the map of the alley, which gives a really good, and you guys all received this previously. So, but they're all the pictures of all the garages in the neighborhood, and none of them are actually an ADU. Like none of them have an actual ADU license to be that, but one of them is actually a house on the alley, and that's 611 Maxwell. And the other one, the alley that he mentioned on 7th, and is actually a house on the alleyway. Again, on 2528, the accessory structure does look like it's not a garage and there's windows, so there's not an overhead door. So not that it was be used as an ADU, but it could be an office space or other things in there. So I was just trying to state that, you know, not all of them are garages and some of them are living space, so to say, instead of just garages. So, but I think, and then, you know, the main house is, we are lower than the main house, and it is subordinate to the main house by a little bit more than 3 feet, and it is set back from the other structures. So, oh yeah, so this one, the next slide, that picture, it just kind of shows you the vernacular in that alleyway. So everything else is right. So I think
Claire, can you make that full screen just as Renee finishes up?
yeah, so so there's I was gonna point out that the ones that are the actual homes on the alleyway, and then the ones that are not have garages that are actual like living space, but
Is that
Yeah.
better? Is that full screen?
yes.
Okay.
So the off to the left-hand side, Ronnie, there's the green garage right there. It's a green garage and it has and then there's a steps up to the main house. So that is a house on the alley. It's its own residence. Again, across the street from that is the one right above the picture above, which does not have a garage per se, a garage door to be used as a garage. So it is some sort of living space inside. I'm not saying it's an ADU. I'm not saying that it has those things. What I'm saying is it's used as living space. So I think hopefully I addressed the comments, and if the staff has any additional or the board has any other questions for me, I can answer them.
Okay, thank you so much, Renee. We will now move on to board discussion. I ask that everyone mute your computer or phone for the duration of this discussion. We've allotted approximately 60 minutes for this discussion, and I know Aubrey will be watchful of a timer, and she'll be our time checker this evening. I don't know if anyone wants to kick off this discussion. For those of you who may have never attended a Landmarks board meeting, the ordinance provides for 5 Landmarks board members, but intentionally 2 of them are design professionals. So sometimes with this, it's very helpful when one of our architects kicks it off, as I am one of the members of the community on the board. So I don't know, John or Ronnie, if you're willing to start the conversation.
John, if you'd like to, you can, but I am more than willing.
I think you can go ahead. I have some questions after that.
And Ronnie, actually, this is Lucas. Just real briefly, I think we should address Mr. Shu's request.
That was what I
before
was
going too far forward here.
Thank you, Lucas.
And if I could just ask Claire, can you explain any notices that went out in this case, or any other city staff who's familiar? I would include publication or posting and mailings that went out. Can you just explain how that worked in this proceeding?
Absolutely. On May 5th, we mailed out, May 15th, we mailed out letters to property owners within 300 feet of this property. There's a sign that went up on the property 10 days before the meeting, and also this was noticed on the website 10 days before the meeting. Aubrey, am I missing anything? Oh, it was also in the Daily Camera legal section, and also in the News from City Hall section in the Camera.
All right, thank you, Claire.
And Claire, I think the letters were mailed on May 12th. Do you have May 15th? When we confirmed yesterday, it was May 12th.
Yes, May 12th.
Mr. Sue or Shu's client did not receive a letter. Is that the case, or?
That's our understanding, yeah.
Okay.
He's actually we checked and he confirmed that he's actually on the list, so it was mailed. It's possible that it will arrive in a while.
Okay. And Claire, I think you mentioned the 3 forms of notice that are required for these hearings. One is the publication, one is the posting on the property, and one is the mailing to abutting property owners. So I think the purpose there is to put out reasonable notice to the adjacent surrounding properties. Not necessarily always going to be perfect in terms of what reaches people, but the point is to give people a reasonable opportunity to participate. So with the city complying with those 3 forms of notice, and with Mr. Shu didn't say who his client was, but I think it's clear just from the communications that have occurred that he did have actual notice of the hearing at least a few days ago. And it's unclear why if or whether he was unable to be here tonight. I think it would be reasonable for the board to move forward tonight. It does not appear that Mr. or the property owner's ability to participate has been impaired, but rather there has been a reasonable opportunity to participate. So thank you.
Thank you, Lucas, for clarifying that.
Before we go any further, I have a code question that occurs to me when we were looking at the alley saturation diagram. Was there or was there not in the ADU ordinance that was passed some time ago by council a method where a proposed ADU had to be, or that site had to be eligible based on a circle of what, 200-foot radius, and the number of ADUs that were allowed in that district that were inside that circle? And was that exercise completed on this?
I can speak to that. So there is a saturation limit under the current accessory dwelling unit regulations. For historic properties, it actually increases from 20% to 30%. But my understanding is that with the new ADU regulations that go into effect September 1st, that saturation limit is eliminated. And so, again, appreciate the discussion about ADUs. Again, that's not within the purview of this review, because that's the use, and that is permitted with its own requirements if it's approved, if the building is approved this evening.
Okay, thanks, Marcy.
And then to tee up the board's discussion, we do have those questions to help frame the discussion that goes first with, is the demolition of the building appropriate? And then go from the mass, scale, and location down to the next level of details of dormers, roof deck, windows, and doors, and then finishing with the materials. We're happy to share those in a screen if it's helpful for the board's deliberation.
Marcy, I would like that. I was gonna structure it similarly and wing it, but if you've got this written down, it'll be so much easier.
Yeah, happy to. And I think Claire has it. There we go. Thank you.
Great. Great. And Claire, your screen share is similar. It doesn't, it's not a full screen. I don't know if that's intentional or not, but
It's not intentional. Let me try again. How about now?
yes.
Excellent.
All right. Well, I first of all thank the applicant for the body of information that was presented. I know I started by asking clarifying questions, which, you know, were about potential issues, mismatching in drawings. But I do think that the totality of the content, which is plans, sections, elevations, three-dimensional images, as well as the context map, is very helpful. And, you know, that those are the things that allow me to, and the rest of the board member, to better engage about, you know, the topics that I brought up, which I will have some comments on them. But I'm just going to run through this. I think staff has adequately provided, and the applicant has as well, that the demolition of the existing garage is inappropriate due to its age of construction. The mass and scale and location of the proposed accessory building obviously is a point of contention. I believe, and I think staff has noted, that the location of the accessory building is appropriate, and its relationship to the alley. The mass and scale, I think, are things that I'd like to talk in greater detail about as we look at the actual architectural drawings, because it'll help me point to specific aspects of the building that I think are those defining characteristics. And the dormers, the roof deck, the window and door openings, I think those smaller items are important to talk about. And I will have some comments about the dormer and how it relates to the mass and the scale. So those two things will be tied together. And not being able to talk specifically about materials yet, let's look at the architectural drawings, and I will go through this a little more systematically with some images. Okay, and it's I will just offer this up. It's sometimes it's easier for me to talk about the building by looking at the applicant's architectural drawings that they've submitted, because the organization of those, is just commonplace in terms of the architectural world, that you get to see all the elevations, you can see all plans, and you can talk about these things more easily than this is going to be a little hard because it's fragmented for me. But I'm going to try. So the overall mass of this building, I think that the applicant and the staff have recognized is based off of a historic precedent of a 1.5-story structure that was on the site. I think that 1.5-story structures also are adequately described in our guidelines, the couple of different bodies of guidelines that are related to this property. And I think that if that is the precedent, that the overall major roof form of this building is in compliance. I will say that I think the guidelines also suggest an alternate route, which is to reference the historic structure on site, which has a very different roof form. And I'm going to park that, but let, I guess, everyone know that there are other ways to kind of skin the cat. But if the route for this project is to use the historic building form, then my comments are going to also kind of match that, because I think that is the premise here. So the first thing that I want to point out is the size and scale of this dormer, because in fact, I think that the building's overall proportions are in easy compliance with the design guidelines. I believe that both the height of the plate and the width of this dormer, which is on the public realm, are larger than both typical dormers. Well, I'll say larger than typical dormers on buildings, larger than typical dormers on buildings of this scale, and in this case, taller than typical dormers that are on buildings that have a 1.5-story volume. And because of that, I think that this building is more wall-like than another design of the dormer might allow it to be. So in short, I think that there are modifications to this dormer that could improve the disposition of the building and reduce the overall volume of it on the alley, which is the primary thing here, in my opinion, that is not documented in the conditions by staff, but it will be something that I recommend we talk about and include if we are to pursue any type of approval for this. And so if people are up for it, I'd like to talk about it a little more, or I can pause that and talk about other things. I'm just kind of looking for a general nod from my board members. Would you want me to talk about this just a little bit more and explain? Okay, I got a thumbs up from, okay. Let's look at the other side of the building. Let's look at the interior side of the building that's facing the, okay. So on this side, there are 2 dormers, and obviously they are smaller. And I think because of that, they are in greater compliance with the guidelines that talk about the relationship between dormer and overall scale. And I think they are more recognizably traditional because of that. And I looked through all of the guidelines that are pertinent to this, and there's a little bit of like a cyclical referencing. And I think there is more explicit detail that does reference this. So if there's any question about it at some point, that's like, is Ronnie making this up? I don't think that is the case. And I think the guidelines do talk about the fact that while, and I know that this was included in staff reports, but the fact that while in some cases, a large dormer or a larger dormer may provide better interior space, that smaller dormers or a series of smaller dormers are more appropriate. And so, I present this side to say smaller dormers, I think, are more tolerant than one large dormer. If you go back to the other side of the building, consequently, I think that the windows in the dormer also look a little unusual, because I think and I think staff's response was, you need vertically oriented windows. I think that is not always the case. I think you can have square windows in dormers. I think go look around and they are there. And they generally relate to the compactness of that space in the dormer. If we look at the section of this building, if you could pull that up, my recommendation is going to be that if we move in the direction of a type of approval and the applicant chooses to keep this building form based on the precedent, that an exploration in the reduction of the wall height at the dormer will improve the overall mass of this building. That means lower the lower end of the dormer as much as you can and still get the types of clearances that will allow for the usability of interior space. That's the big one. I have another thing. And the other things are a little smaller, but I spoke about the windows. I think that if the applicant is interested in the traditional trim, that is an approvable route. I think that there should be a conversation about the windows and where they are. And I think there's if the dormers are reduced, I think that there's a different window pattern that doesn't necessarily require a strict vertical window that could be approvable. One other thing that's about like the messaging of the building, if you show an elevation of the building, any elevation, I think the historic building was, and actually let's look at the back elevation. I said any, but this one, the materiality is less explicit, just because there's other line work. So if you show the alley side, I think if the precedent for this building is not the existing historic structure of the house and that it is the barn, that the language of materials, trim, and trim would be better suited to follow the vernacular of a barn. That's my opinion on this. And primarily, I believe, and I'd be interested in staff and my colleagues' response as well as the applicant. I think that the use of shingles or shake shingles in the dormers, while it's a traditional application of material in other types of architectural language, historic language, that it's less likely to be found in a simple building like a barn. And that the proposal might be stronger if it was simplified and not detailed with like a higher, architectural style material that might show up in dormers. Similarly, I think we might look at the detail of the windows and have a conversation about that as well. Although I think that the window detail is more approvable than the material change in the gable ends. Those are my primary comments, and maybe I'll pass it on to somebody else.
Okay, you can pass it to me unless somebody else wants to jump in.
Go for it, John.
Okay, I just have a couple of simple comments on things that Ronnie just said there. I think that our normal rule in considering things appropriate or inappropriate has to do with the kind of exposure rule that we use. On the main house, if one was to do some modification to the house or extension of the house, the tendency would be to do it internal to the more private space of the property and away from the public views. In this case, because it is on the alley side, I think that the alley exposure is where the intervention needs to be as understated. I like Ronnie's approach of saying, well, if the aesthetic is derived from the original structure that was on that site, the historic structure, which was more of a barn, then the barn aesthetic is appropriate, and appropriately you would direct the blowout figures on the roof towards the interior side of the project, the large dormer or whatever, the larger wall, away from the public view. And on the public view, bring the roof line as complete as possible down to the 1-story break line, which would be more consistent with the historic building. If I go through the list of questions, I think that the demolition of the little building that's there now, because of the age of the building and its condition, it's appropriate if it's properly deconstructed. That's kind of outside of our call one way or the other, but it's to be able to say it's appropriate to remove the building or take it down or whatever to enable the site's reuse in this level of intervention. But I think that a blanket demolition at this point in our history is never appropriate without some attempt to reuse and salvage materials. So that would be what would make it fully appropriate. I think that it's appropriate to allow this project with all the conditions that we've already discussed. But I do think the issue of massing, and particularly on the alley side, does need to be addressed.
Thank you, John. Is that it for the moment?
That's it for the moment.
Thank you, Chelsea.
Yeah. So trying to go through the questions. So since the building that is going to be removed was either constructed or modified after 1978, I agree that replacing the current building with the ADU will not damage the historic character of the house or the historic district. And the changes are generally consistent with the guidelines and the historic district in Mapleton Hill. Because the ADU proposed is similar in size and character to the surrounding buildings and garages seen from the alleyway, I don't have an issue with the mass and scale. With the proposed ADU, they're still within the allowed floor area. And I think that the proposed recommendations and considerations offered by staff on the dormers, roof deck, window and door openings meet the design guidelines. I'm interested in hearing from the applicant on what they think about breaking up the dormer. I guess I'm sensitive to the fact that this is not, a museum artifact. Someone's going to be living here who loves this property. And so I want to ensure that whatever suggestions we put forward will work for somebody to be able to live in this space in a way that is functional. So I have a question about that for the applicant when that time is appropriate to ask that. Because I guess I don't feel comfortable speaking on that until I hear from them that that could work. And so can I ask that question now or?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if we want to wait till we, what do you guys think? Because we may have one or two more questions for them as we go through this. Because I think we're all going to have to do at least one more round with our comments. Chelsea, is that okay?
Yeah, that's fine. I just want to, before we get into discussion for the second time or whatever, just to get some of these, get some answers so we have a sense of what's reasonable.
Thank you. So I do think that it is appropriate to remove the existing garage. I do think that I'm thrilled that Ronnie started this off because he was able to articulate maybe some of my questions or concerns about mass and scale. And I know sometimes I don't personally have a problem with the square footage proposed. It's more how it reads, and especially on this alley. I think both Ronnie and John had some good questions about maybe some tweaks or some conditions that would make it more palatable and more appropriate in this very cherished historic district. And Claire, if you'd be kind enough, I think it was on slide 31, you know, and I know that oftentimes, and not being one of the design professionals, things to me, it could be an optical illusion, but when I look at the slide on the left, you know, what's proposed doesn't look subordinate to the primary structure, but again, we're not seeing the entirety of the primary structure. So I don't know if anybody else right now has questions for Renee, but maybe you could address, I think what, Chelsea, are you trying to figure out if some of the functional space and whatever with some of the changes would still be workable for the owner? And I think my question still goes, and I know some of the mass and scale appearance can be dealt with in refining design elements. So I don't know unless, and Ronnie or John, if you have anything for Renee right now, those would be kind of the two questions I have for her at the moment.
Abby, just, you know, if the design team and applicant have any thoughts on just my general comments, that's about ways to make modifications to the dormer. I think Chelsea's also interested in that topic. And then the materiality piece, and then just the idea of what the concept is and how it might relate to the style.
Yeah, and specifically my question is how would breaking up the dormer impact the living space, and how would making the dormers smaller impact the living space?
Thank you. So Renee, are you willing to take those on now?
Of course I am. So let's address your view of this alleyway. And you know, when we do computer renderings, it's so hard to actually get the actual view. I think the better way to look at it is if Claire could give us I submitted the east elevation with the existing house. And so you can see that even on the north elevation, if she could pull up the north elevation, you can see how that the main house is quite a lot larger than the proposed structure.
Sorry, Renee, give me a minute, I'll find it.
Yeah, it's okay. So like the north elevation shows that, and then I have an east elevation picture where I have the east side of the existing house and the proposed structure that kind of show how it's actually, the main house is actually a lot higher grade on Maxwell than the alleyway. So the Maxwell main residence is the the ground is a lot higher actually. So this house, actually, the proposed structure is like sunken from the main house. So I feel like in that retrospect, it is subordinate, but in per se, that view of the 3D, it is hard to do the perspective. So hopefully those elevations will clear up your question for that. While Claire's finding it, can I address the other part? If that's okay.
Please.
Okay. So I do appreciate Ronnie's, discussion about making that dormer a little bit smaller. I would like to know, like right now it's about 2/3 to, the length of that side of the house. And the reason why it is so long is for the head height of the stairs, because that's the way you walk up the stairs. Now, certainly we could change, Chelsea said, how does this change if we break up the dormer? How does it change for the footprint of the usable space? And yeah, I would have to, do a little bit of reworking of how the stairs and the head height for code allow me to walk up the stairs. But certainly I'm not opposed to exploring that with the Wednesday meetings and making that dormer a little bit smaller, squaring up the windows. On the south side, the private side, we do put those square windows in there. So, and if we could make those a little bit, each dormer is a little bit smaller, I think it would be appropriate, and I'm willing to explore that. It's just a matter of, it is a small footprint, and we have the roof structure is nice angled pitch to match the barn. And so that push gives me a small top plate on either side. So that's why the dormers are, required for the living space, so that I can get stairs in there and I can get a bathroom on that side. But I'm not opposed to, having that discussion and talking more in the details about it in a LDRC meeting.
I guess, hearing that, if the board is interested in having that conversation, I would prefer that we include that as in the conditions for it to be considered, not to be required, because we don't know what is exactly workable. And I trust whoever is on LDRC to work with the applicant to make something that works, but not require it at this time, since we don't know what will work.
And I think, Renee, you're well aware of how collaborative the LDRC meetings are, and how it's really fosters an opportunity for much more of a dialogue, which, I don't think it's fair during a virtual board meeting to redesign something either. So I think that it sounds like you're willing to do that. John and Ronnie, I don't know what your thoughts are now, or anything you might like to address with Renee, or address to move this forward.
Maybe I can go. Well, let me just take a big step back. I think staff appropriately put us on the rails of the topics to be discussed. And I want us to stay on that, and I want us to go forward. I also have to say that we've looked at many accessory structures that have second stories. Whether or not there's habitable space below, whether or not the habitable space is the main level as opposed to a garage, or the habitable space is just on the uppermost floor. In my time on the board, I have seen many of these accessory structures with similar and sometimes greater upper floor square footage, which is the thing that I think outside of the building footprint, which I think is in compliance with typical accessory garages and the exposure of it on the alley, which I think is is consistent with both the guidelines and with the Landmarks Board's historic interpretation and administration of it. So I did feel compelled to note that, to just recognize that I am, and I know my colleagues are also hearing the comments that have come up. And I think that those mass and scale things, are in our lane, and, that we've been consistent with that. So I think it should be a condition, though, to reduce the overall scale and width of the dormer. Like, I don't think that is a if and maybe. I think that should be a requirement. I think the applicant already has an issue with their stair, which I brought up at the beginning. I know that there are many solutions to designing these little buildings, and believe that we wouldn't be tying hands too much with a request to make the dormers smaller, both in height, and to break up the width by either creating two or one smaller dormer at the back. And I personally am confident that by doing that, it will diminish the overall scale or perceived scale of this building. And it will consequently reduce the wall-like effect, because it'll appear to be more roof-like. So I would request, or if I'm the one that makes a motion, that is a requirement in the conditions.
Ronnie, can you, oh, sorry.
Well,
Ronnie, can you, oh. Okay, I'm gonna go. Ronnie, can you point to the criteria or in the guidelines that you're using to request that requirement?
Yep, it's gonna take me a second, but I can do that. Give me 1 second.
Sorry, John, maybe if you wanna go while he looks for that.
It's actually, let me just go here. Mapleton Historic Design Guidelines. I'm going to jump around a little bit because it's everywhere. It's sprinkled around in the Mapleton guidelines, in the general guidelines. And while not directly and I'm not going to read anything from a different guideline, it's in all of our guidelines. And some of them are way clearer, but here it goes. Although this is the Mapleton Hill Historic Design Guidelines, number 2. Although oversized dormers may make the best use of interior spaces, they are usually not appropriate. More than one smaller dormer is usually more appropriate. There's a couple of other things here. Give me a second. Mapleton Hill Historic Guidelines. Subset 4, let me think about that. It was your G4 says, dormers are intended to be elements of secondary importance to the main roof form. An expansion of existing dormers or additions of new dormers should preserve this relationship generally. And I know that talks about new dormers, but there's another section that references back to the new dormers language when it talks about the creation, when it creates a new structure. And that says dormer ridgeline should be lower. That's correct. The size and scale of the dormer should be compatible with the size and scale of the existing building. And I don't think it is, because it's 2/3 of the building, which is not a dormer. It makes it much more pronounced. It needs to be diminutive. Notwithstanding the fact that one large dormer may give the greatest usable space within the roof form, smaller dormers may be the most appropriate. The roof form of dormer should be compatible with the main roof form. Okay. Give me a second. there's some language about full stories. Give me one more second. Okay, this is the general guidelines, and I don't know what I got, page 39, subset 4. The size, scale, and style of new dormers should be compatible with the existing dormers of the structure. The form of the dormer should be compatible with the main roof. Dormer windows should be similar in proportion to the first and second floor windows, but smaller. New dormers must be subordinate to the main roof in terms of mass, scale, and height. And again, I don't think that's the case. Often, 2 small dormers are more appropriate than 1 large dormer. Dormer ridge lines must be lower than the main roof. So it's all over the place. I'm going to read another one here. Dormers should be secondary to the main roof and should be lower than the roof line. Oversized dormers are inappropriate. And so my case, what I would say is this is an oversized dormer. It's 2/3 of the building. So that is where I think the code agrees. By the way, let me just also throw this out there. I look at a ton of buildings and I look at a ton of design guidelines, and I've looked at so many dormers in my life, and many codes have criteria associated with the width of a dormer.
Yeah,
Ours do not, but there are reasons that that's in there. And I recognize that while ours doesn't have an explicit width, and that I'm not saying it needs to be a specific width, that I know that those are the types of elements that make buildings have the scale. Our guidelines talk about them with the language that I've just read to you. And I know that the staff has quoted a couple of those. And I will just share with my colleagues here, like, I think that the dormer doesn't comply with the guidelines.
I agree with that, Ronnie. Mark, I see your hand, but do you mind if I go back to John first and then we'll come back to you, John?
Well, I was going to concur with what Ronnie's saying, and particularly on the alley side. I do think that there should be more freedom on how to treat the dormers that face into the private zone, based on our treatment of other sides of a historic property in a district. But on the public realm side, the alley being a secondary part of the public realm, I think that we need to, as closely as possible, reduce the mass of things on that face.
Yeah, John, so I'm just going to jump in, and Mark, I apologize, but on that note, like, John, I agree with you. I think that obviously the large dormer is on the alley side,
on the outside,
but I will also say, like, that I think is the primary elevation that needs to more stringently follow what it is that I'm describing. And I think that there is greater flexibility interior to the property. So I'm in agreement with you. If both of these dormers were on both sides of the building, I think, if it was symmetrical and we were like the back and the front, whatever, the interior looks like the back, it would be, an easier thing for us to highlight and say, oh, well, that's why the flexibility. But I am in agreement with you. And if we were to move to the DRC, I think that acknowledging that greater flexibility is allowed in the backyard facing side would be smart of us, as DRC is like a little bit of a design exploration.
Right.
Okay, gentlemen, I'm going to turn it over to Mark.
Thanks. As I'm not a design professional, but there are times where, in this case specifically, could the applicant simply flip that upper floor, the floor plan of the upper floor, and that might involve moving the stair, et cetera, so that you maintain the same amount of living space, i.e. that big dormer is on the yard side of the building rather than the 2 smaller dormers, and the 2 smaller dormers move to the other side, and you maintain the same amount of interior space, but you achieve Ronnie's suggested modification to the alley. I guess that's a question for the applicant or the design professionals, but would you guys accept that as a possibility to have the large dormer or a large dormer be on the interior side, the yard side, the north side, south side of the property?
Yeah, I mean, maybe I can speak to that. Yeah, I think that there's a lot of ways to do it. Let me just say, the guts, I looked at the guts, like the plans were in the submittal. And that's why I was saying, like, it's nice to have the applicant's drawings, because then you could look at all of them and we could talk about that. Our job isn't so much about the insides, but I took a look to see, that's why I brought this whole stair thing up at the beginning, is like, there's a misalignment, but there's a handful of stair things that need to be sorted out, Mark. Yes, I think one option would be forget what's happening on the inside to like reverse the idea of the upper floor dormers. And I think that would be in greater compliance. And I would also say, in every one of those cases, that dropping the plate height of that dormer, and I think it's pretty close to a minimum, but I think dropping the plate height of that dormer will also have a positive impact on the overall perceived scale of the building. But yeah, I like your suggestion, is that like, could they contemplate something that looks like the other side, and could they have more flexibility on the inside? And the floor plan flip could be it. Although my sense is there's probably some other stuff that if they move forward, Renee and the applicant, and if we move forward with this, Renee and the applicant will do a little Jenga.
Okay, my second comment is I spent some time in the alley. And I want to say it's an alley. It is not the street. It is not public facing. It's a dirt alley. It's filled with various garages. The garage that you're considering allowing to be demolished is one of the uglier structures in the alley. But there's plenty of alley sensation, alley feel, and especially power lines. It's an alley, and I think that as and the alley is narrow, as alleys should be, and so your view of two smaller dormers, one larger dormer, is really kind of it's you would be looking up at it, and as you pass by, it goes out of view, and there's not a lot of visual range to it as you enter the alley. Anyway, I think I understand the concerns. I was just simply pointing out that it is an alley, and it is not the primary view for much of anyone, other than the homeowner driving their car into park. So yes.
And Mark, I appreciate that, but I know at some point, and Marcy may know this more historically when it happened, but at some point after the Mapleton Hill Historic District was designated, that there was a survey and quite extensive research done to kind of identify the importance of alleys, understanding their alleys and their function, as well as that experience going down the alleys, whether in a vehicle or pedestrian. So I do know the guidelines, have addressed that it has been historically something we've looked at. Part of Ronnie's comments to me, and I'm in agreement with him, it's because it also goes to our consistency in projects over the years that have been approved or not approved because of that. And I know Renee knows this very well. First of all, I know this project's in very capable hands with Renee, and I really appreciate what you've designed and brought to us, Renee, even though, as this moves forwards, I think it's safe to say there's definitely going to be conditions on it. But I know Renee knows this well, is that if we're looking at a primary house, like John, you were saying, we do primary elevation, a secondary, and a tertiary. And in this case, because it is new construction, and it's a good sized new construction, hence is why it's at the full landmarks board, is that I would treat personally that alley side as more of a primary elevation, like we would on the streetscape, understanding it is an alley. So hey, I don't know, I don't want to put you on the spot, Aubrey. I do want to do a time check. I think this discussion, we've been having it for a while, and then I want to see thoughts about how to proceed with this and move this project forward.
Okay, I have one more comment.
Okay.
Just to Mark's comment about the alley, it is an alley and it behaves like an alley in terms of function. The interesting thing is this particular area of alleys, before Mapleton Hill was fully designated as a district in the 80s, there was an explosion of alley house development in that neighborhood. And so it's a front door for a number of people that are living along these alleys. And so there's just a little more public realm quality to it, because they walk down the alley to go in their front door in multiple cases in that block and the adjacent block. So we kind of have to consider that now. It's a done deal. These things exist and people are living in them. Just a consideration.
And I appreciate that. And I also think it'll be great that someone will be living in this ADU. And hopefully will do so comfortably. So I think, that's another piece. I was just looking at Google Maps of this street and looking at the alley. There are some really big structures in the alley. And I guess I just want to bring up that people are concerned about a tunnel effect, but one ADU does not create a tunnel effect. It is all of the other units within the alleyway that together do that. And so I don't feel it's fair to assign the cause of a tunnel effect on one unit when a lot of the properties on the street have been afforded the ability to put larger structures than what is being proposed here in the alley. And I appreciate Ronnie, like I wasn't questioning that you were had the evidence to back up what you were saying. I just, it's helpful for me to actually look at the exact language that we're using to make decisions. And I do think it's important to note that in nearly, most of those criteria statements, like it does say generally, and I do feel that this application meets more guideline criteria than most of the projects that we approve, or at least that I've been a part of. And so I would say across the board, like even as is, this project had more, does this meet the criteria? Yes, like there were more yeses in that column in the packet than there usually are. And so I do feel that on balance, this project does meet it. And it's like we have said many times, the criteria is not a checklist. And the only reason why I'm advocating to be a little bit more flexible is because this is a very small unit that somebody is planning to live in, and we don't know what is going to work yet. And so to mandate something that we don't have exact recommendations for, or that we don't know is going to work yet, I think is inappropriate. But I'm okay with requiring that it is investigated with the LDRC.
I know Marcy's about to put us like close to conclusion, but I wanted to tell Chelsea, thank you. And I like I'm always open to hearing like or anybody that wants me to explain myself in greater detail. I hope that my reading of the code, while I don't think it was just on the point, was helpful, just demonstrating that there's a lot of reference, and I agree with you that there's loose language. We might at some point talk about the looseness of that language and whether or not we need to fix it. Yeah, thanks. I got all of those citations from the code because I wanted to, in fact, be able to share that. And so I'm glad that you asked.
So I do hear consensus that we feel like this project can move forward, but with some conditions, and in fact, staff's recommendation that it have some conditions. So I don't know if my colleagues feel like we're ready to kind of look at that or a potential motion, or Ronnie, did you have other things you wanted to address?
I feel like maybe we look at if staff has created something to look at, that we look at that, and then I can comment on it, and I could add some suggestions and maybe try to make a motion.
Okay, and I know that Marcy, if we Marcy has some suggested language for motion, but we might take a 5 to 10 minute pause if we start adding things to that motion. So she has the luxury of kind of going offline to do it for a few minutes.
Yes, so thank you, Abby. What I would suggest is that I share my screen. I have the conditions that staff has recommended, and then I've started suggesting some based on this conversation, but know that it's just a starting point, and I'd like the board to discuss it, and then, as Abby said, to then take 5 minutes to polish them once the board kind of clarifies what those conditions should be. So
that's a great idea.
With that, let's see. I did cut off, so the first two conditions are just kind of standard language about all LACs. Where it goes specific to this project, it is what I heard is reduce the scale and width of the dormer on the north elevation, and then either consider or just reduce the scale of the dormer on the south elevation. I want to make sure I have that correct. There are 2 dormers on the south elevation. Modify the window size in the dormers too, and then to clarify that one. The ones that staff recommended that I didn't hear board discussion on is insetting the flat roof entry portion of the building from the corner, eliminating the divided lights in the window. I struck the condition of vertically oriented windows that are smaller in size on the second level to follow traditional pattern of smaller windows in the half story. I think there was other discussion about the size and shape of those that I've not yet captured. And then the fence and details about the building. So hopefully this is an okay starting point, but please go ahead and elaborate.
My only comment is that I don't think B is necessary based on our discussion. The south face being the interior facing one.
Okay.
Anyway, that's just. I think
great.
Reduction on the alley side is sufficient.
So for letter A, I think what I would suggest is reduce the scale by reducing the width, the height and width of the dormer on the north elevation. And then we could also rate, consider creating 2 dormers if needed.
What would be a satisfactory reduction?
That's a great question. And I mean, we could make something up right now, and I don't know if we should.
Yeah,
Um,
I definitely don't want to. I'm just like, I don't want to set anyone up for failure that
yeah, yeah.
someone comes,
Uh,
they come back and they reduce it slightly and then we say no.
Yeah,
because they
I
like-
mean, I'm curious what staff thinks about that. Do you, I mean, I know that the DRC is super flexible. We have plenty of room to talk, and the size of this building, you know, modifications to it are a little simpler than a very complicated structure. So I don't want to like downplay the effort that goes into creating these buildings, but it's pretty simple. But so I'm curious, Marcy, do you think we need to put some numbers in here?
I would advise against it. I think that the design review process is iterative, and it's the intent for the board to review the proposed designs, modify it to ensure it meets the guidelines, and then work with the architect in the committee meeting to ensure that the revised design meets the conditions. When I've seen the issues come up the most is when the conditions are either overly prescriptive to say reduce by 2'6", and then they look at the floor plan and find 2.7 is actually the best. So being too prescriptive, or having a list of conditions that say consider this, because you could literally just say we considered that, but it doesn't effectively change. So I think that as written, reduce the scale by reducing the height and width of the dormer on the north elevation provides enough flexibility for the design professional and enough guidance for the committee to review this. And I think the guidelines, as Ronnie read, are pretty helpful and clear in terms of talking about proportions of dormers.
The Windows thing here, you know, modify, oh, sorry, Chelsea, did you have something for that?
Well, just in that spirit of not exactly knowing, you know, acknowledging that we don't exactly know what will work in reality, and because this is a small space and the living, like, you know, with, yeah, I would feel more comfortable if the A was consider, and I feel that there's a certain amount of trust with the designer here that there will be a genuine effort, but I don't feel comfortable requiring that, not knowing what is possible within the small space that is being worked within. And everything else is not considered. This would be the one consider. And I think that there's an interest to try to meet the needs of the board. So I would like to put our trust in the process.
Chelsea,
Are you saying, oh, sorry, go ahead, Mark.
I was just gonna say, would if you change the wording to work with the LRDC to reduce scale of the height and width of the dormer on the north elevation, you know, just saying that this is not something that they can consider and toss aside, not that they would, but that the condition is to work with the LRDC to you know, to achieve the desired results.
And Chelsea, I hear you and I value that opinion. And it's funny because I wouldn't be comfortable just saying, consider this, as I would like a little bit more direction with that. And, you know, my experience is especially with someone like Renee, she probably already has ideas about that. And I don't know.
What if we did explore options at LDRC to reduce the scale by, so it's something that has to be brought forward as options.
I mean, the DRC process is an explorative, iterative process. I feel like we're just stating what the DRC is. But I personally feel like I mean, we could add it here if you'd like. Marcy, I see you have something. What are you thinking?
I'm offering an alternative, which is that the board could craft the conditions that it wants in order for, the design to meet the design guidelines, and then offer the applicant the chance to respond to say, yes, we're in support of these and feel we could work with these, or no, I see that this could be an issue, because I don't expect anyone to be able to calculate all of the things that go into a floor plan on the spot, but a design professional will know, yes, we can work with that. For example, the dormer on the north side is to meet the head height for the stair. This dormer is much wider than what you would need to meet the head height and have a livable code compliant building. So my proposal would be that you craft the condition to give clear direction to the LDRC, and then offer the applicant a chance to respond to say whether or not she feels she could meet those.
I like that. Chelsea, does that work for you?
Sure, it does. But I did ask the question earlier if reducing the dormer would impact, like how that would impact the space, and her answer was we would need to look at how that is. So that's why I have this concern. So, but it's fine. Let's keep going and we'll circle back with Renee at the end.
Okay. Well, the window size in the dormers is tricky. I don't know what to say about this, but this is what I jotted down, and it's total nonsense jargon, but it's the truth. Windows, and you don't have to write this, Marcy, but windows need to be appropriately sized and located in the dormers using traditional precedent, because depending on the type of dormer and the size of dormer, there are different ways to put windows in them in different geometries. The thing that is unusual is when you have a dormer and you don't have windows, or if you have a dormer and you have googly-eyed windows. But that's not to say that there aren't precedents for square windows, for a band of square windows, or for a vertical window, I think, as staff had suggested. So I don't know how to say this and make it meaningful. But what I jotted, if this is meaningful, and I'm wondering if staff could weigh in, appropriately size and locate windows and dormers using traditional precedent. Is that?
That's as good as you can do with that without getting extremely prescriptive.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's about the location as well. So it's the size and location of windows and dormers.
Right. It's proportional rules that are appropriate to other proportions you're using in the building.
Yep. And then, the last thing that I wanted to just say is I talked a little bit about the materials and the trim. And I think there are many options as to what to do. But my suggestion is to simplify them if the building is meant to take the historic nature of the barn form. And I think that the bigger piece there is obviously I really like tricky trim details, but I think that this building, this alley building, if it's meant to follow the character of a historic barn, that a simple trim package in coordination with, considering removing the shake in the dormers is more consistent with the building form and historic building that they're trying to reference. Does that make sense to everybody?
It does to me.
Well, if you guys, yeah.
The thing is, issues of materiality and color, if we're putting this into an LDRC process with our approval, those will be reviewed in detail in an LDRC setting.
So personally, I think this captures everything, and I would be willing to make this motion. And I'd also say, if you guys are, we could present this to the applicant and let them share their feedback before doing it, but I like what is crafted.
I could support what's crafted.
I could too.
I would like to ask the applicant.
Still here. Am I allowed to talk now? I'm, the owner and I are willing to look at reducing the scale and the height of the dormer on the north elevation. And then I am a little concerned about modifying the window sizes, only because it's just not, but the one thing about what we've presented today is we weren't allowed to go to the Wednesday meetings and get a lot of feedback, which is a really great tool for us as an applicant to get feedback from you guys. So I am willing to consider all these A through H, minus the F, and then go to the DRC, the LDRC meetings on Wednesday, and have good conversation. So a lot of that happens.
I want to be clear, because what you're saying is you would be willing to consider it, but if this motion is approved, then it would be required. So I think the question is, my concern or my question is, which of these do you feel like it is something that you would be able to consider, and which of these do you think you could agree to right now? Because that's what
I can agree to all of them, Chelsea. I appreciate the way, I think it's a design hurdle to look at, reducing the height of the width of the dormer on that north elevation for the stairs. But, we're sitting here, and I know Ronnie is, and I's mind works similar. I already have an idea. So, yeah.
Great.
I'm not surprised to hear that.
So,
And I know that this seems like a lot, and I know we're getting probably close to making a motion, but this is also brand new construction in Mapleton Hill Historic District. And, so, I mean, I think we've needed this time and kind of this discussion to really get to this point. So Renee, I so appreciate you and the owner's willingness to consider all of this and more.
Yeah, Abby, I really appreciate that. I mean, it is true. This is, A through G for new construction in Mapleton District, I would call that a win. So thanks.
Exactly. I mean, there are, I'm thrilled to see it along this part. I'm thrilled to see this far along, to be honest, and with you've heard all our feedback, and I just know you're capable of addressing it.
Yeah, I think this has to be said, Renee, the quality of your work gave us a basis for all of this deliberation. So this is a compliment.
Yeah.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, you've done an amazing job.
I feel pretty prepared to make a motion, but I had a question. And this is another staff question. Is there any value in clarifying intent at the head of this recommended condition to talk about our attempt to reduce the potential wall-like nature and perceived mass of the building? Because I think that the neighbors have very justified claims. And I think that their interest in their community and in the context of the alley is like something that I applaud. I want neighbors to come out and like that in my neighborhood and say, hey, this is what we really want. And again, I personally believe that the scale issues, not the use issues and stuff that's outside of our purview, but the scale issues will be addressed through some of these modifications. So Marcy, do you think that there's value in including something that, like intent language?
I do. I think that provides clearer direction to the LDRC in then looking at these details.
Okay, so I would say that in an attempt, and we can recraft this, but I would say in an attempt to reduce the potential wall-like nature and perceived scale of the proposal, and then the list of everything below in prominently letter B is the thing. So, I mean, you can actually, however you guys want it, but it could be the lead into letter B, or it could just be all of these things. Cause I do think that some of the other articulation components like that one. Yeah. Okay. I mean, I feel like this is something I can make a motion. I feel comfortable with that.
Ronnie, could I, it seems like the board's interest in reducing the potential wall-like nature and perceived scale of the proposal is from the alley. And so,
yes.
So
Yeah, that's
agreed. Please
that's a great addition, Marcy.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, there is another consideration, Marcy, that I think is operating here in terms of people that either oppose or are bothered by this. And that's the fact that a lot of the properties on the Concord and Maxwell side are two-story properties, and the views across the alley see the formation that's happening there. And so there's concern about that whole of the alley. Not that we can do anything about that, but it's going to be an increasing kind of impact throughout the city as density goes up, which seems to be the direction it wants to go for all the reasons stated. And so it is something that we kind of have to consider, is the urban figure that's forming here. But we can't do it in this particular thing. We're doing what we are enabled to do right here. I'm throwing out a discussion that needs to happen in some other place at some point.
Well, I am ready to make a motion if you guys are cool with it. And I will just say, like, I think, I don't think we should get into too much more on John's topic, although I think it's very important. And it is also on my mind, and I imagine all of our minds, and believe that the size of this building and the width of this building is consistent with the widths of buildings that have been traditionally found on alleys. And so, I think we're contemplating the vertical shape of this, which is why I think the dormers are so important. And I think the wall-like nature that's written in the code is really meant to address that. So I move that the Landmarks Board adopt the staff memorandum dated June 7th, 2023 as the findings of the board, and conditionally approve a landmark alteration certificate to demolish an existing garage to replace with a new detached accessory structure at 661 Maxwell Ave, a contributing property in the Mapleton Hill Historic District, as shown on plans dated April 2nd, 2023. Finding the proposal meets the standards for issuance of a landmark alteration certificate, Chapter 91118, BRC 1981, and is generally consistent with the general design guidelines, provided the stated conditions are met. 1. Oh, shall I read all of these, Lucas?
Please,
Ronnie, I know I vacillated on this, but I think given the strong interest in this one tonight, you should go ahead and read all the conditions.
The recommendations of approval. 1, the applicant shall be responsible for completing the work in compliance with the approved plans, except as modified by these conditions of approval. 2, Prior to submitting a building permit application and final issuance of a landmark alteration certificate, the applicant shall submit the following, which shall be subject to final review and approval by the Landmarks Design Review Committee, LDRC, to ensure the final design of the garage is consistent with the general design guidelines, the Mapleton Hill Historic District Design Guidelines, and the intent of this approval. Revised architectural plan showing A, in an attempt to reduce the potential wall-like nature and perceived scale of the proposal from the alley, revised design to show sub A, reduce the scale of the north dormer by reducing its height and width. Consider creating 2 dormers if needed. B, modify the window size and location of the dormers to meet traditional precedent. C, simplify the trim detail and consider eliminating the use of shaken dormers. D, the flat roof entry portion of the building inset from the southwest corner of the building by at least 1 foot. B, elimination of the divided lights in the windows. C, fence elevation showing a minimum of 1 inch spacing between pickets, finished toward alley, paint stain color. D, details of the following. Subset I, materiality of and permeability of patio at parking areas. I'm going to change this to all exterior materials, including all wood doors and windows, lighting, siding, shingle type gutters, etc. 3, exterior stair railing, including materials and color. 4, final paint and roof colors. 5, location of trash service area and mechanical devices on exterior, including screening, ventilation, and AC units.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any more discussion before we take a roll call vote? On a motion by Ronnie, seconded by John. Chelsea?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
Ronnie?
Aye.
And I vote aye, so the motion carries unanimously. And Renee, I hope I see this one day soon at LDRC in the future. I look forward to that.
So
Thank you, everybody.
And then Marcy will walk through the next steps with this LAC.
all right, so as the LAC is conditionally approved, then City Council has the opportunity to call it up within 16 days. It has been tentatively scheduled, it will be on the June 15th City Council call-up agenda. And at that point, if it's not called up by City Council, then the conditions are reviewed by the LDRC. If it is called up by City Council, then a public hearing will be scheduled within 45 days. And then if it goes to the DRC and the conditions are satisfied, the LAC is issued and that is submitted with the building permit application.
Just one question, Marcy. Was the call up tonight, was that made by the dissenting neighbor, or has it previously already been called up?
Could you restate your question?
Well, is it called up at this point already?
No. The City Council, so the decision from the Landmarks Board is then sent to the City Council. They have an opportunity to call it up within 16 days. And so that date is June 15th, that the City Council will have the opportunity to decide whether they want to call it up or not.
Okay, I misunderstood that you said it was already on the agenda June 15th.
Sorry, I misspoke. It's not for the public hearing. It's on their call-up agenda on June 15th.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, sorry for the confusion. Okay. So that wraps the item up, and I will move to matters, but I'll share my screen differently.
And Renee, thank you again.
Can I have 1 minute before matters? Can we take a break?
Sure. I mean, Abby.
Yes. Oh, yes, sorry.
Okay.
Is 1 minute enough, John?
Add 2.
My cat has been neglected of attention this whole time.
Yeah, mine are cruising around here too. I have one that looks a lot like yours, Chelsea.
But Lucas has a cat or two that sometimes the tail makes an appearance.
He just
Yeah, he's hiding it now, I think.
See if I can get a good view.
Yep.
All right, are we ready to go to matters?
Sure.
Okay. All right, so we have a handful of things under matters. The first is just another plug that there is an open spot on the Landmarks Board. The application is currently open. It closes July 2nd. Appointments will be made in early August, and there's more information through these two links or QR codes on the screen. So get the word out as best you can. I'm hoping there will be good applicants and that we'll have a full board starting in August. Okay, the next piece, at the beginning of the year, we decided to streamline in an attempt to streamline the Landmarks Board meetings, we would no longer do a monthly statistical report. And John requested that we still do a mid-year check-in, which I really appreciate because it's always interesting to look at the numbers. So Olivia, our wonderful intern, helped pull some numbers together. I'm hoping this will be a 5 to 10 minute discussion or so. I mean, we can go much deeper into the stats, but kind of it's meant as a snapshot of where we are this year, so far this year. And then following that, we have on the matters of request from board member Chelsea about the discussion of changes to the Landmarks Design Review Committee process and scheduling. So here's our mid-year historic preservation case review trends. So far, or to date, we have received 128 cases. This is down 7% from 2022. We've had 18 Landmarks Design Review Committee meetings and 6 Landmarks Board meetings, one regular, one per month, and then a special meeting last month. Of the cases reviewed so far this year, 64% of those have been at the staff level, 28% of those have been at the LDRC level, and 8% of those have been at the Landmarks Board level, which means that you all see, about 40% of the cases, and we review about 64% administratively. Looking kind of bigger picture at these 5-year trends, or I guess 6-year trends, the average is here in green, which you can see we were below last year, which is the blue, and then we're even farther below generally in February, March, and April from those averages before. We're starting to surpass the numbers from last May, but it'll be interesting to see kind of how the year shakes out. We first started tracking these to see if there was like an ebb and flow through the year. And I think what we found is that it's unpredictable. There's never really a quiet time. There's peaks and valleys. Looking a little closer at the staff level reviews, we've reviewed 50 staff level demolitions. Those are the post 1940 buildings and then accessory buildings over 50 years old. 4 of those had been previously reviewed and approved. We estimate those take about 30 minutes of review time from intake, research, and determination. As you know, it doesn't have to be a full demolition in order for it to require historic preservation review. So it's about a 50-50 split of projects that are full demolitions and then projects that are partial, which includes things like replacing siding on a street facing wall. So the scale really varies quite a bit. And then there's the occasional accessory building, like the one shown on the screen. For the staff level reviews, we reviewed 25 staff level LACs so far this year. We also estimate those take about half an hour per case. And per the Administrative Rule G, which was adopted in 1999, it kind of identifies the 6 things that staff are allowed to review. It's re-roofing, paint colors, restoration of existing historic features, landscaping, very specific details about rear and side yard fences. And then downtown, we review railings, awnings, and signs. And so the most common LACs at the staff level this year are signs downtown, repainting, and re-roofing. So looking at the LDRC level, more than 75% of cases are approved at the LDRC level, and about 15% of cases have been reviewed up to the full board for review. And the discrepancy between those are the ones that are still pending at the applicant. Of the ones that are referred to the board, about half of the applicants choose to go forward to a public hearing, and the other half either revise their design or just stop the project, I suppose. And we estimate about 4 hours of staff and board time go into each LDRC case between intake, prepping the slideshow, facilitating the meeting, and then following up with the notes and case closeout. And that also includes the time for you all board members to attend as well. So looking at the LDRC level, 70% of the cases reviewed at that level are LACs, 22% are demos, and then 7% are tax credit applications. And then finally, looking at the landmarks board, you all have reviewed 12 cases so far at the landmarks board. I think it's unusual or remarkable that the vast majority of those have been demolitions. We've really seen quite a few demolitions and stays of demolition to date this year. 3 have been LACs, 1 designation, that's 830 14th Street here, and then 2 initiation hearings. And we've estimated that it is approximately 25 to 30 hours of staff and landmarks board time to bring a case to the landmarks board. So looking ahead, we are looking forward to a new member appointed in August, hoping we have applicants. We will have tentatively planned for a landmarks board retreat in the fall once the new board member is on board. We're also going to be working very diligently on the civic area in 3 different ways. One is with the historic district application that you all will see in July. We're also continuing to partner with Parks with the civic area cultural landscape assessment. And then we'll also be involved in the Reimagining Civic Area East Phase 2 project that Parks is leading. And then looking a little farther ahead, next year, 2024, is the 50th anniversary of the Historic Preservation Program in Boulder. And so the CPI Saving Places Conference will be in Boulder again. And we are hoping to have a good prominent presence at that and really showcase all that Boulder has to offer. And so maybe that's a future discussion topic of if there's interest on the board for walking tours or conference proposals, etc. And then it also tees up for the 10-year update to the historic preservation plan somehow already. So this is a big year, but next year is going to be even bigger. So that's a snapshot halfway through 2023. Happy to answer any questions or hear the board's discussion, reflection, what stands out in terms of preservation by the numbers.
Well, I think staff deserves a big round of applause for everything you've already accomplished this year. I don't know why I feel tired all of a sudden. So, but great
Just looking at all
job.
those stats.
I know it's amazing. But great job.
Yeah, I would also like to compliment staff. I mean, this is less about the statistics, but this is very valuable. I really appreciate how it is presented. So a lot of gratitude there. And then also just a moment of reflection here. There's been a lot of change over the last year and a half, 2 years. And I really feel like we are in stride. You know, and so I'm grateful that we have the team that we do in our department, and I think that things are going well. I just feel like reporting that to you because Marcy, you have taken on and done such a great job of the role that you are in now. And, you know, I was very happy to hear that you were seeking this role and it became available. And conversely, I was very disappointed when you were moving on. But here we are, and I'm glad that you're doing it. And I think that you continue to demonstrate great leadership and just feel like saying, you know, we firmly have our feet under ourselves again because of your appointment to that position. So thank you.
Gosh, well, thank you, Ronnie. And I'll never be as articulate as you, especially on the spot, but I just want to be a mirror and reflect that back to all of you, because as you can see in this LDRC slide, it really is the effort of the volunteer landmarks board members that is the core of this program. And you all review the vast majority of cases the way that the code is currently set up. And so we have a wonderful team. I agree, we've got our feet under us. And I also just want to extend that gratitude to you all as board members, because you all have done a tremendous amount of work between the LDRC and landmarks board meetings so far.
Well, thanks. I'm interested in hearing what Chelsea might have to say about the DRCs. And I'm only bringing that up because I found a moment of silence there, and I'm also feeling sleepy, but hungry primarily.
Well, that's like specific to put you all to sleep. I think that's a good segue.
Yeah, it's the perfect segue to Chelsea's beautifully written letter.
And Chelsea, I copied the parts of it that are kind of action items, but whatever is most helpful for you to share and tee it up, take it away.
All right, thank you. I cannot promise to be as articulate as the letter as now at 9:30 after a long day. But I really appreciate everyone's time and consideration reading the email that I sent out. I have been thinking about this for a while, and especially with the recruitment of a new board member. Actually, I wanted to ask Marcy, do you know if anyone has applied at this point? I know it's only been a few days.
Yeah, I haven't checked, but I will follow up with, I don't know so far.
Well, it seemed to me like, well, one, for myself personally, the commitment of being on the board and having a demanding job just creates a lot of conflict. And unfortunately, when I have to decide between my job that provides me income and board commitments, I always have to choose the commitments for my job. And I just feel as a board, we have a responsibility to try to shape the structure in a way that allows anybody who is passionate about this work and is a part of our community to participate. And I think that we have some serious barriers with the way the LDRC is structured right now that prevents anyone who wants to be a part of this great work from being a part of it. And so I think that there are a lot of different ways that we could address that. Some are easier than others. Some we could start right away. Some will take more thought. But I obviously want to make sure that there's support for looking at some of these and potentially thinking about, are there any that we could implement right away while we consider more longer term solutions. One that I will throw out there is to shift LDRC meetings to Fridays. It's just a lot easier in terms of work schedules. There's just there are less demands on Fridays for work than there are in the middle of the week. So that's one thing I'll put on the table. I just wanted to start this conversation because I am very interested in trying to find solutions that will work for us and for the long term, and for the potential candidates who may be able to apply if we start implementing some of these changes.
So Chelsea, I want to thank you again for doing this. I personally don't know how you do it with a full-time demanding job. You know, while I still work approximately 40 hours a week, I can choose most days when I do that work, and you don't have that luxury. And I think this is definitely a valuable discussion. I don't think we're going to be able to solve or do a lot this evening, but we have to start somewhere. And I think what you did that I really valued is you addressed a problem, but you immediately had some solutions or things to think about and contemplate. And I know there are some things that, like Marcy would say, are in the code and maybe would have to be the rulemaking changes and all of that. So, some things we can't do as easily as others, but I just want to applaud you for saying, hey, this is an issue, and actually giving some concrete solutions that we could it's like having a plan or a design in front of us to respond to from an architect. I thought it was very well done and very well handled, and so thank you for doing this.
Yes, and I will give credit where credit is due, that I did talk to Marcy about this, and she had some great ideas that are included in this list. So I just wanted to give her the credit for coming up with some ways that we can make this better.
This is wonderful, Chelsea, and everybody that's worked on it. Some of those are about timing. Right, the first three of these are about timing, which is interesting. We could talk about what it means to do it every other week, if that's manageable amount of time that would take. We could talk about the problems that a Friday might create for vacationers and stuff. We could have modified versions, which is like one Wednesday, then one Friday or something. But I think the timing thing as topic is great for us to explore. This piece here about empowering staff, I agree. I agree with the timing thing too, but like this empowering staff thing, there are some things that come to DRC that I think staff could manage, and it's not their fault that it's coming to the DRC. I think it's just currently adopt an administrative rule to expand what they can review. Like, it makes a lot of sense. I think we should dissect that a little bit and find out what those are. I agree.
Well,
And maybe someone on staff could at some point, not right now, but just we could talk about that as a topic about what the easy pickings are. The piece here about whether or not the staff should, could bring something to the full board if they're going to vote no or whatever, that it has to. I think there are certain types of cases that if the primary questions, the first couple of questions are an automatic, it needs to go to the landmarks board instead of DRC, those are the easy candidates. If it's a little more nuanced and it's a down the stream kind of piece that perhaps staff knows they're going to vote to bring to the board, I still think some of those are valuable to come to DRC to kind of air in a different context some of the topics that bring up the nuances that might yield a valuable conversation with the applicants and some of the board members, where the conversation could be more transparent. So I think we'd have to dissect that too. This is wonderful.
One way that we could spread out the demand on board members would be to consider an option of reducing the LDRC presence to one board member as opposed to two, which would have the individual responsibility in the course of the year. I have to also applaud Chelsea for taking this on, because I really think she's on to something as far as getting people to apply to this board. It's been getting out there. This is a hard board. It takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of commitment. And there's a certain amount of crossfire that you get caught in, and people kind of are shying away from that. So it's a problem for us right now that we can't seem to find people to fill our slots. And so if we could do things to I guess make it more palatable to the public, then we would have more interest in this. I do think that part of the issue there is that we need more outreach to the public. I've been saying that for a long time. And maybe it's not so much us that do it as it is Historic Boulder and other groups associated with this, that they talk us up and talk up the work that's being done. I think that it's a kind of a compound problem right now, that we're seeing kind of a issue with civic engagement generally. But I just think these are a bunch of great ideas that I think we can talk about. We can come up with some solutions. If we can engineer enough flexibility into the solutions so that we can do what needs to be done in a given instance, and then redirect resources when we don't need to do it the same way every time, I think that would be great. So kudos, Chelsea.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. And I really appreciate the support that you all have for this. And I totally agree that we need more outreach. And also, if people who are working can't join the board because of having to attend during the workday, then more outreach will get more people who are from probably a similar having meetings Dave, Marcy,
Chelsea,
do you
you're-
know if any other board has mandatory meetings during work days?
I-
Oh,
did
go
you
ahead.
ask- Who are you asking? I'm sorry.
Oh, who,
You were
I said
breaking up,
Marcy.
Chelsea. Or you were, on my end, you were breaking up. I couldn't quite
Oh,
understand. So,
oh, sorry. I said Marcy, but Mark works too. Whoever has the answer.
I don't know all the board schedules. I know that no other board has a process, every single week, though you guys do rotate through. I think I've heard that the Landmarks Board is the most time intensive after planning board, which is saying something.
I see Mark's hand up.
yeah, I just wanted to add on that I'm super appreciative of Chelsea to bring this up, and the comments, rightly so, have been focused on the Landmarks Board and the work that you do and of the Design Review Committee. And I'll simply say that this, I would want to, through via Marcy or through the Abby or the chair, however this might work, to pass this along to council. And I think it's completely appropriate that this be passed along in the context of this is an example of the struggle that the city is experiencing with DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion in our boards, in our council, and it's just another data point that council, the whole city is going to eventually struggle with this as we expand the number of boards, the role of boards, the hours required, and our goal to engage a broader range of the community in our civic responsibilities and in our boards and commissions. And so, people have talked about council pay, we've talked about boards and commission pay and so forth. And I think that over the last several cycles, we've seen not just a Landmarks, but we've seen a decline in applications for most boards. And I think last time OSBT as an example, when I've applied to OSBT 5 times and I never got on. But some of those, we had 17 or 18 applicants some of those years, and it's down to 4, something like that. So there is a trend here, and I think Chelsea addresses that, but it's also bigger than this. But these are absolutely important points, and it should be brought up to the council boards and commission group, which is, I think, 2 council members. But anyway, I think it's important.
Thank you, Mark. And with, oh dear, almost 4 decades working in the nonprofit world, so many of the nonprofits, from symphonies to hospitals to art museums to, in-school programs to Meals on Wheels and all of that, were traditionally done by, they used to be called the white women in tennis shoes, because they were the ones with the free time that could do that. And that's also, I think, Mark, one of the things you said that resonated with me is that one of the ways to get volunteers is also offer those volunteer opportunities at times where volunteers are available, where working volunteers. And, I think that Chelsea just hit the nail on the head, that what I hadn't really thought through was we're excluding some potentially wonderful fellow board members, because of the timing or whatever. It breaks my heart. We're not going to be able to solve this tonight, but I think there's, I talked briefly to Marcy about, I'd be interested to see how other Landmarks Board, historic preservation commissions, whatever they're called, in similar cities address this, especially who have a process like this. And, Marcy, I think you may have mentioned, I know that our July 12th meeting is very full and we're waiting for a new board member to do a mini retreat or a full Landmarks Board retreat, but that you said there might be the possibility to carve out time at the August board meeting to discuss this and give all of us time to, talk to people, do a little information gathering, and maybe bring additional ideas to do this. I do have a quick question for you, Chelsea. You know how we get these 10-week breaks in between rotations. Do you have a break coming up soon for your Landmarks Board rotation?
I think I do, yes.
Okay.
And I just want to thank Abby so much because she has stepped in anytime that I've been unable to join the LDRC. She's been amazing at filling in, and I really appreciate it. And it's also really unfair that she has to do that when someone has.
It's not
So
unfair.
we all hit places.
Yeah,
where
but
we
Chelsea,
can't
you do owe me photos from Botswana, so
Oh, you're right.
yeah, so that was you. Someday I need to see some of those photos, but I do think this is important, and I think that I hope you have a break coming up.
I do.
And I
Yeah.
have more flexibility than maybe anybody else currently on the board, so I'm happy to pinch hit.
Yeah, I have the rest of June. So yeah. And obviously it's been more difficult with less people. We're one person down, so we've
True.
all been taking on more. But I think that the exaggerated, the problem being exaggerated just kind of made me realize it is a problem even when we have that additional person. And so it kind of made me feel the pain a little bit more enough to want to do something about it. So yeah.
Well, thank
I have
you.
a proposal if you're ready.
Yep.
So yeah, I'm ready.
You're ready. Okay. And I just really appreciate some credit, Chelsea, but really I just sent you a list of what you and I had talked about. All credit for this letter goes to you, and I just really appreciate the leadership that you've shown in kind of outlining a very compelling case. And I have said many times before that I really want this program to support people who have jobs serving on this Landmarks Board, and we actually have the power to make some pretty meaningful changes because the Landmarks Board can adopt administrative rules. Some of the constraints require code changes, but those aren't insurmountable. So I think there are two options on the way going forward, both with coming back to the Landmarks Board in August, because July is just not realistic. So either we could set that date out and come to like a workshop or some sort of, I guess, study session with the full Landmarks Board. And in the meantime, staff could be proposing and doing some analysis, some prioritization of recommended changes. Alternatively, the board could create a subcommittee and work with staff to come up with ideas to then present to the full board in August. And in either scenario, I was going to suggest what Abby kind of already did is if there are board members who would volunteer to help cover your rotations if needed in that meantime before we're able to make changes, it sounds like there's support from your fellow board members.
Yeah.
So to put that in a question, would the board like to create a subcommittee to work on this between now and August? Or would you like staff to go forward? And honestly, we already have a list of ideas, but to expand on that list.
Well, I would invite board members doing less work. I would love to. I think that you probably all have a great idea of where to start, and if it would be helpful to do like a check-in between now and August to just get a sense of where you're heading and maybe do a little bit of a brainstorm of ideas. Maybe that's one way, like an in-between, between the board leading it and you leading it. That would be my proposal, is just, yeah.
I like that, and that very aligned with kind of the intent behind this. I feel like you and I have spoken and you've presented some good ideas. Maybe I'll reach out to the other board members as we kind of go forward with this to brainstorm, get all the ideas on the table, and then in August start to prioritize or to come with a recommended list and kind of analysis of the impacts of those. So, okay, we will do that. And thank you for bringing this forward.
Thank you so much. I think this is going to be amazing for the future of the Landmarks Board and all of our lives. Thank you.
So is there anything else, Marcy, you had under matters? I don't believe so. Anything else from any board members? I know we went a little longer than we thought we might, but I also am very impressed that, considering new construction of a building that, is almost 1,000 square feet in Mapleton Hill, I thought you guys navigated that very well to move that along. And if there's nothing else, the meeting is adjourned at 9:49 p.m.
Good night, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Guys.